We'll call the meeting of the City Council to order and welcome everybody. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Present.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Will Mayor Pro Tem lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
No, but
Pardon me.
Councilman Haney will.
I don't lead.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You are the once and future Mayor Pro Tem.
See, huh?
Okay, before we, well, let's approve the agenda. The one thing, there is a change. We do have a presentation tonight. It'll be very brief. But does anybody have any other changes? If not,
Move to approve.
okay, the agenda, any objection? No? Then the agenda is approved. The presentation this evening is to remember a person who was a good citizen and a supporter of the arts, and to recognize a citizen who is still amongst us for all of the fine work that's been done in supporting the arts in the community. Last Thursday night, the Arts Commission awarded the Hope Fraser Award. And Hope was a member of the Arts Commission years back and left the planet much too soon. And I believe she was 60 years old when she died of cancer. But she was a worldly person, a journalist, an editor of newspapers, and she and her husband, I think her husband still is living here in the valley, they moved to Ojai, and she also had a love for the arts and was an artist herself, and she encouraged other people. And so I want to read to you, the Arts Commission years back created the award in her memory. It's named in honor of the Arts Commissioner, Hope Fraser. The award is given in recognition of the social and cultural benefits of an individual's work in or for the arts. The award recognizes the recipient for their social contribution to our community, either by increasing participation in or expanding the avenues of the arts, and thereby increasing our sensitivity to the human condition. Fraser, a respected photographic artist and journalist, succumbed to cancer in December of 2007. She is remembered for her dedication to uplifting the human condition and is best known for her graphic portrayal of the effects of coal mining on the peoples of Appalachia, that part of the country from whence she came. It was called Brushy, and Between the Halves of My Heart, Fraser was also instrumental in founding the Ojai Film Festival and the Ojai Poetry Festival. Prior recipients of this award, John Azevedo was an art patron in 2008, Tom and Becky Lowe, musicians, in 2009, and then the award this is not an annual award. It is only given to people who have kind of a body of work or a lifetime of support. Susan Amen, artist and member of our Art Commission in the past, in 2015. But Thursday night, someone that many of you, I'm sure most of us know, Nigel Chisholm, local innkeeper and bon vivant, however you say that around town, was selected and given this nice little trophy in recognition of his work. But unfortunately, the meeting didn't take place, although the award was presented. And so I thought it fitting tonight that on behalf of the citizens and the Art Council, well, actually on behalf of the council and the citizens, to to thank the Art Council and to recognize Nigel Chisholm for all of the things that he has done for this community. And I normally don't read proclamations, but I'm going to read this one because I think that it's important that we understand why he was selected after 3 or 4 years of no recipient being given this nice award. It says, whereas the City of Ojai's Arts Commission has established the Hope Fraser Award in memory of the former Arts Commissioner, and whereas the award recognizes individuals who, like the award's namesake, have made exceptional social and cultural contributions that promote the arts in Ojai, and whereas Nigel Chisholm is known for his welcoming attitude to local artists, hosting live music in his restaurant, offering wall space for artists and photographers, whereas Nigel's employees, aspiring actors, he helps young musicians develop their skills and confidence by way of a weekly live youth music night where they work with mentors. And whereas Nigel has hosted numerous salons, fundraisers, and generally created a gathering place for artists and citizens throughout our community and visitors. Now therefore be it resolved that I, John F. Johnston, Mayor of the City of Ojai, and on behalf of the Ojai City Council, do commend Nigel Chisholm for his many works and for being named recipient of the Hope Fraser Award for his outstanding support of the arts. And this goes beyond just the arts. You know, one of the things that I admire, Nigel, is that a week or two ago I was asked to make my debut on the stage at the Arts Center. Nothing like getting up there before an audience to understand what performing artists go through every time they have to go on stage. Nigel not only supports actors, he goes down and makes himself vulnerable and participates as an actor in a number of productions, not always the hero. Sometimes he's the villain, and he does a very nice job at that. But Nigel goes beyond that. He has been someone who has been concerned about the homeless, who has raised money through kind of, what do they call it? The concerts. We have them for like farmers and things throughout the nation where the musicians and artists come together and share their talents in support of raising funds. And my understanding is it correct, Nigel, that you put on a thing for the homeless and raised $7,000 in one evening, which is... So any of you folks out there who need to raise money, Nigel's your guy, you know. In addition to that, things like the Fukushima meltdown over in Japan, Nigel stepped up and brought musicians and artists together and raised money to send in part of the relief effort on that. So he goes far beyond the valley, but he makes the valley or the city of Ojai his home. And if those of you who haven't been to the Vine, you should drop by and say hi to him. He's a wonderful human being in addition to being a maybe mediocre actor, but and this is said by someone who doesn't even qualify as a mediocre actor, so who am I to judge? So anyway, so come on up,
Get out there.
Nigel, and let's...
I don't even recognize him when you see it.
I know, I did. Yeah, that looks good. You both look handsome.
Few words from Nigel.
All right, so I don't know who to address.
We can even use...
So can we get the gesture open, please? That's the first thing that needs to happen.
Is this on? Yeah. Now, I'm told that you don't want to get any feedback, so you stand behind the line here.
Says the non-mediocre actor. So all of my life I've aspired to be mediocre, and I guess I achieved that goal. So whatever I needed to say, I said last Thursday. However, something else occurred to me right before I came out, is that we spend so much time trying to figure out what divides us, and you guys on the council spend a lot more time dealing with that than I do at the bar. That it's nice to remember what brings us together. And the arts do that, and they do it in a very beautiful job, whether it's through music, or through painting, or through writing, presentations, performing. And so, in my little way, I'm glad to try and cut through the nastiness that you lot have to deal with on our behalf. So thank you very much for what you do. And I will try and continue to do what I do to balance off whatever happens in this community as we move forward. So thank you very much for this.
Nigel's also a great singer. If you haven't heard him sing, you're missing out.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. I should probably get the award as well, I think.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna have you come back in 2 weeks for that.
Let's have another.
I'll deliver it to the fire. We're also going to have it engraved at the top of the elevation.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Nigel.
Nice.
Well deserved.
Mayor, do we have any,
Oh!
okay.
You should have left it with me, Nige.
No, it's not broken. It'll glue.
There we go.
That's enough.
Here, you got a lifetime guarantee on that. Bring it back to me and we will,
Nothing so easy, is it?
You might have to wait for the next art commission meeting to get that fixed, but
We told you you'd be coming back.
They'll fix it, right?
Mayor, do we have any other presentations like this? Can I do a quick thing here? I just wanted to. I just wanted to bring up quickly that we have another Ojai resident that did pretty well this past week. Peter Farrelly won the Academy Award for Best Movie of the Year in the Green Book, and he lives in our community. I just wanted to say thank you.
Is he here?
It just points out for clarity. There are two. Ojai won 3 Oscars this past weekend. Peter got 2. And a gentleman called Paul Massey, who lives on Signal Street, he won for Best Sound for Bohemian Rhapsody. So we live in this incredible arts community, and we're all blessed by it.
okay. So, I don't want to drop this. I'll set that over there.
Not enough silicone, I guess.
Somebody steal my agenda? Did I get rid of it?
I hope not. No?
Where did my agenda go?
We'll get you another one.
Yeah.
There's another one coming.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah, okay.
I'll put this underneath.
Thank you.
no problem.
There.
Okay, we have
Johnson?
the consent calendar.
Yeah, I'm going to be requesting pulling item J for
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, on the consent calendar, we have a request for item J to be pulled. Do we have any others that,
I had one question on, I guess it's item C. Is that I guess that's what I'm looking at here, is the Ojai warrants? I just had a quick question on that.
Oh,
okay?
that's B,
Okay.
B.
That's B.
Is that B?
Okay.
I don't have a B thing in front of me, all I have is a blank page, but
Okay.
I'll accept it as B.
Okay, so we are going to pull B and.
There is no B.
There is no
It's the
what?
very first one, that's why I don't put
Yeah.
the tab.
Okay, and Bill, you wanted to pull
There it is.
J,
J,
the
okay.
discussion on J.
on the management agreement, okay. Very good. Okay, is there a motion to accept the consent calendar with those 2 items pulled?
Move to approve consent item except for B and J.
Correct.
Second.
Second, moved and second, any objection? If not, so ordered. Okay, B comes before J. Randy?
I just had a quick question, and I'll defer to the rest of the council members, but on expenditures greater than $10,000, is there any way that we could get just a simple explanation as to what it is? You know, when I see the sheriff's payment was $279,000, I get that. I know that that's part of the contract. but there's other payments in here that I'm just asking. I could go to the finance department myself personally and ask, but I'm just wondering if that's just something that we could agree that on any line item over $10,000, we just get something that says what it's attached to. Is it a general service contract? Is it this contract? Is it that? I think for the public that they'd enjoy that also.
Okay. Is there any problem with doing that, Steve?
Just takes additional staff time, but there's no problem with doing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Rudy's here. Does Rudy want to weigh in?
I don't, did you want an explanation during the meeting, or do you just want it in the future to have
Yeah,
the
just wondering in
items
future,
explained a little?
I could pull a couple of these up and just ask. Like I said, the Ventura County Sheriff's Department is $265,000. I understand that. I wouldn't need an explanation for that.
Okay. Which
But as I go down the list here, here's Roadline Products, Inc. for $11,000. I have no idea who that is or what it is.
That's Public Works expenditures for road maintenance.
So that's all I'd have to say. Public Works expenditure, road maintenance.
So are you looking, can I have ask for a clarification? You're not looking for invoices to back up this, you're just looking for a little explanation of what it
Right.
is? Okay, got it.
Right, something simple.
It's easy to do.
Okay, thanks, Rudy.
Okay,
Okay,
so with that explanation, do we have a motion to accept that? We,
move to approve
Okay.
consent B.
Okay,
Second.
second. Any objection? Okay. That is taken care of. Okay, Bill, you wanted J?
Yes. Item J includes, in terms of the report, city council options. And I wanted to pull this to discuss those options. I had previously circulated a concern to all council people, therefore it was a publicly expressed concern about the issue of having contracting with one client in the presence of other clients at a facility. And I see potential issues with that. But rather than debating that particular issue, I do think it's important that rather than simply extending the existing management arrangement with one of our clients, that we look at option 2 in terms of the city council options that were presented, which was to extend the current agreement with the Ojai Music Festival to allow time to go through an RFP or request for proposals process to seek other proposals for operation in the bowl. I do not have an interest in adding a position to the staff, but I do believe that there are very well qualified and motivated and people independent of any existing clients who would be interested in putting a proposal in for performing these services. And so I would like to not approve the recommendation of the staff, but to extend the agreement and with a time certain for request for proposals process. That's my, that's what I would like to see. I'm not going to make it a motion yet until I hear from others.
Is there?
Well, first, I can respond to that. First of all, the season is in place right now. And so I think it would benefit us all if we, at a minimum, extended the existing contract 1 year, and that we ask the city manager to actually prepare an RFQ, and that we do send that out and we get that in process for next year.
One of my concerns is that these the issues I've been brought have been expressed for months and months now, but this is it didn't come up in a timely fashion for us to have an RFP process, which should have happened in time for this season. So I guess I'm a little leery of extending for an entire year, as opposed to not being bound by basically, this not being put before us in a timely fashion in terms of going through an RFP. I don't see why it couldn't stay on a month-to-month basis, bring up the RFPs and switch in mid-season if need be. I don't understand why that would not be possible.
Well, first of all, the bowl season starts in April. There's a lot of preparation heading into it. I'm sure Steve can answer this too, but so there's a lot of preparation that takes place, and there's a huge learning curve as far as managing what goes on in the bowl and the process of all of the users. So it's not like we could bring someone on quickly and then have them grasp the process quickly. It's something that we need to get them on board. We need to actually work with the existing contractor and understand the process, that would be my way of going about it. So I see a 6-month period to get a qualified applicant, if that's the route we're gonna go, and also allow the existing contractor to bid, and then see what.
Look at other proposals, yeah.
Right.
But I just have a serious concern with an inherent conflict of interest issue of one client managing a facility that other major clients are also at. I think that's an inherent issue. I've expressed this for a long time. I wish we would have had the option to debate this earlier, and so I'm gonna have a problem with that.
Right. So, we can either have Steve speak, or we can have the rest of the counselors, talk, or we can have Mr. Bennett here from the Ojai Music Festivals here, and.
I think the mayor will
Yeah,
handle that.
Bill, when you use the term client, are you talking about users of the bowl?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have one
Yeah.
user contracted to manage the bowl with other users. That may not have, there may not be an exact alignment between, in terms of the city's overall interest, between delegating to one client to manage a facility that other clients use.
Okay, and right now, we do have someone, which is the festivals, that is willing to do it and may want to continue doing it. You're just asking that it be opened up to more than that?
Other proposals,
Right.
yeah. I wish that other proposals had
Okay.
been requested much earlier in anticipation of the new season.
Okay, because the recommendation is to open it up. You're
No,
trying-
the recommendation is to extend the music festivals.
Well, yeah, but it says
No,
they are.
that's additional options if we don't take the recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the recommendation on page one
Okay, well.
is to approve the agreement through December 31st, 2019.
Okay,
basically to manage this
Are
season.
you intending to make a motion tonight, or are you?
Yes,
just-
I would. I want to
No,
hear from everyone. but-
Okay, well, I think if you're gonna make a motion, why don't we do that? and
I'll
then-
go ahead.
Okay,
I'm gonna, I mean, I may not, I know it may not prevail, but I'll make it for the purpose of getting this done. I will make a motion that we take option 2 to extend the current agreement to allow time to go through an RFP process, and that the request for proposals be issued immediately, and with a deadline, time certain of, let's say, June 1st of 2019.
okay, is there a second? Okay, I'll second it.
For clarification, is that, so you'd extend it it'd be 5 months you're extending it?
Well, you have to have time for the proposal process.
Right. So but we'd have, and since we're a couple months in, we'd have till the end of May.
Basically, I want to set a deadline for the proposals to be accepted.
Steve, does that seem like is that a sufficient amount of time for us to be able to conduct an RFP process, get people in and look at this?
It might be a bit of a stretch to do it in that amount of time. I
Do you have another time?
I think more of the concern would be, I think, the disruption of trying to do this mid-season. But again, if that's the route that council wants to go, I mean, we can make it a priority and get it done. It just has to compete with everything else that we're trying to get done right away. So that's always the challenge there. But I mean, we could get this out probably in a few weeks and, give it a month or so to run. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like it's a completely unattainable deadline. The challenge, quite frankly, with council with the hard deadlines is when you start overlapping multiple deadlines, it starts to become a challenge for staff.
Okay, but wouldn't the RFQ or the RFP that would be put out, that's request for a proposal?
Right.
The invitation, wouldn't that just be the content of the existing contract
Right.
that we have with the festivals?
Right. Yeah.
Because it gets down to experience and price, doesn't it?
Right. So
So-
again, without actually sitting down and working the deadline, I mean, we might be able to do it by June, or probably very close to that. Like I said, my concern more is changing mid-season and the disruptions with
Yeah,
that.
well, Steve, can you elaborate on that? I mean, what do you, and Randy, you said something too, so maybe you need to chime in, but what's the expected impact? If we went to an RFP right now, we would keep the current agreement in place, obviously, until at least June 1st.
Right.
But what implications might that have on the current season?
It's just taking time for us to train and go through that transition. One day they're going to be working with one person, and then the next day they're going to be potentially working with somebody different. That can be just, again, it's doable. It's just harder for the users. And then, of course, we got to make sure that new person is fully up to speed and making sure that they're doing everything, correctly.
I just think it's a fair process. You ask for proposals for something like this rather than just locking somebody in, especially when it's one client managing affairs for other clients.
Is something driving this? Has there been a problem?
I think there have been some, yes.
Okay. What about extending it to July 1st so that it doesn't overlap with the music festival, which is the first weekend, I think, in June?
I'm open to a deadline for, again, that doesn't mean we would change horses. It means that we would
Yeah.
Right.
look at the
Let's give a
proposals.
little more time, at least.
I'm fine with July 1st.
And can Jamie speak to this? He's raising his hand.
Okay, Jamie, come on.
My name is Jamie Bennett. I'm the president of the Ojai Music Festival. In setting out the grid of payments for this, we just took an annual sum and chopped it into 12 pieces. Most of the work will be done between now and June. If you aren't going to do a full annual contract, the contract that you have before you is not good. I would withdraw it because, frankly, we do all the work between now and the middle of June or the end of June, and in October and November and in December and January, it's quite quiet. Although we are answering questions and we're performing functions, it's, the workload is the big workload's coming up. So I would want to just say, I've got to be talked to before you just assume that this contract can continue to run. We don't make a lot of money on this. This is something where I thought it was a good thing to share the expertise we had. And I know Mr. Wyrick has said now several times that there are conflicts of interest. No one has ever brought an example of one to me. No one has ever cited a specific. There are one or two people who may be interested in that job who talk about a conflict of interest, but I've never heard one. So to your question, I'd be interested in finding out. I've never heard anybody complain about the service we provided to the city, so I'm quite concerned when I hear that. It isn't worth our reputation to be damaged for the little amount of money that we get by performing this function for the city. So that's another thing that I have to be concerned about. If people do have questions, if it is a problem, I need to know so I can fix them. Or if I can fix them, I need to know that too. But I hear this cloud of, they've got a conflict of interest, and frankly, I don't see it. We're a service provider to the city. We have our own 2 weeks of time that we can put concerts on for our own festival. And I've got overheads that if I can share them with the city by billing the city for them, it means that's money I don't have to raise. So, as I say, we're happy to do it under the terms. But if you say, gee, you want to do it between now and June 1st or July 1st, I'd say, yeah, but I'd want a different payment schedule because I just took an annual amount and carved it by 12. So.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
You bet.
That was helpful.
Mayor?
Yes, Bill?
Yeah, just respond to that. A conflict of interest issue is not an issue about any specific aspects of people's reputation. It has to do with the structure of the relationship. And that's what the issue I'm raising, again, has nothing to do with the individual actions, although, there's some issues I've seen which have been of concern that have nothing to do with the reputation of the festivals. But structurally, again, if you have one client that is managing a facility that is being used by other clients, that raises an issue with me. Now, I'm fine with July 1st. If we wanted to make it that for getting proposals, and then I'd just add and reiterate that it's only fair, in my mind, that we see what might be out there in terms of other motivated and qualified people wanting to perform this function, rather than locking it into one particular client without ever having the opportunity for others to make proposals.
City manager wants to say something.
Just one thing, what this contract does is, and the main thing what it does is they interact with the nonprofit users that want to come and book the bowl and use the facility. They also interact with the commercial operator, Sterling Venue Ventures, to provide the necessary staff support for that. And again, Sterling, they are mostly a turnkey operation. Of course, they do their own marketing, they have their own people, but there's still some coordination, obviously, that needs to be done. And then what they also do, the other part of this contract, is they also coordinate back with my office. For example, the calendar where we actually divide up the weeks of the year, that are going to be with Sterling versus available to the community for the nonprofits, that calendar comes to me and I give it the final approval. So that's actually part of the interaction that they have with my office.
Okay, Ryan?
Steve, as your interactions, do you have any? Has it been overwhelmingly positive working with the music festival, or is there any potential improvements that an RFP might be able to bring in what you've worked with so far?
Nothing that immediately leaps to mind. I mean, I would say that I think the festival and we have and the city have worked very well together. I think like with any in any relationship, we had a couple of things where and some of that may have been on our end, some of it may have been on their end, but a couple of things that we did work out in the process that we did refine and get fixed, and I do think that it's working really well now.
Okay.
But sure, you could. I mean, is there always room for improvement? There's always room for improvement.
But there's no glaring problems going on. I mean,
Nothing.
that's really what I was looking
Nothing
for.
from my
There's
perspective.
Other than Bill's concerns, there's no operational concerns that you currently have.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
I just think with the long history that the music festival has with the bowl, that to do something this abrupt, I mean, I'm fine to do this in the following year, but not midstream. I
Well, we
don't
would have
feel-
to do the RFP process in this year if we were going to do it, if we're going to have something ready for next year.
Okay.
Now would be the time to make a decision about having an RFP process if we were going to have one. Because if we wait till this time next year, then it's too late. In other
okay.
words, if we're going to do an RFP process, now would be the time to say, all right, we're going to renew this contract and have an RFP process for the next cycle.
Okay, so they wouldn't be, I thought I heard that they would have to be dealing with different people this year.
No, not necessarily. I'm just, if we want to do an RFP process, you have to do it well in advance.
Okay,
And
I
not,
understand
and
that.
that means it
Okay.
would have to be set in a timely fashion, so we'd be open to those options before we got committed to the next cycle.
For 2020.
Right now, we're committed to this cycle.
When's that, Bill? Do you know?
I'm
But-
going to defer to the city manager for that,
But we could do the RFP process.
for the
and-
next cycle.
For the next cycle, so that they would still continue through the year.
Yes.
There would not be a disruption.
Yes, and I would be in favor of that we
Okay,
simply
so we
commit to
don't
having an
have to-
RFP process
So
for the next
we're
cycle.
not talking about a June 1st or July.
No, I withdraw that.
Okay,
If we could make a motion that we have an RFP process for the next cycle, the next season, in anticipation for the next season, I'll make that motion and see if it gets seconded.
okay, and they would be part of that process.
Anybody
Yeah.
would be open to make proposals.
Okay, I'll second that.
Part of the reason why the contract ends on December 31st is, one, it's the end of the year, but also it's a good time in terms of, it's really the midpoint in the break in the season.
So
So
we-
if we have somebody on board by January 1st, they
Do we
would,
have an RFP process this summer or fall
correct.
for next season?
So that there's no pressure, because I know we have so much going on.
So that's
To
the
get this
current
done
motion.
too quickly, yeah.
That's the
okay.
current.
So Mayor, I'd just like to, we sat on the ad hoc committee for, a year and a half, almost 2 years, reviewing this. We made the recommendations, and I think the final recommendation was to keep it the way it is. One of the reasons that we did that is Amber
So good.
had moved from the city over to the music festival, and the transition was smoother in the operations of the facility because Amber had been doing it. Are there concerns? Yeah, there's concerns, but I don't think there's anything that can't be worked out and communicated between the city manager and Mr. Bennett. The second thing is, if you guys really look at this is an $18,000 contract. Buyer beware. I don't know, they're utilizing resources that they already have on site, working with the music festival. They already have something that's in place. And my fear is that we may get something inferior, thinking that it might benefit us. So I think we just need to be careful with that. The other thing is, if we're gonna do this, I think we need to take a look at the scope of what this management system is doing and address all of the things that the music festival is doing that I don't think they're being compensated for. Having a clear dialogue with them and getting a clear understanding of all the things that they do, above and beyond what's in their contract, because I have seen Amber there quite a bit. When you're doing let's say you're doing a Sterling event, you're meeting and greeting at, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, you're staying there for 3 or 4 hours. Then you're leaving for midday because there's nothing going on. Then you're coming back at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You're staying till 10 or 10:30. I mean, there's a lot that whoever is going to do this needs to understand. That's why the other part of transitioning is important. That if we do this, that they're taught how, you know, the who, what, when, why, and how of the methodologies that they've used to do a good job with Libby Bowl right now. So I think that's important. In fact, my inclination would be actually, contrary to Bill's thing, I'd rather extend this for 3 years versus 1 year. I'd rather give them a better contract and work with them on increasing the value of it. For instance, when they say $18,000 for 25 events and then $700 event afterwards, I'd rather take a look at the event calendar and actually figure out how many events are we holding and actually negotiate instead of 700, maybe a better number, and giving that entity a little more control. So whether we do that with them or we do that through the RFP process, I'll go either way. But right now I am leaning towards staying with the music festival, working out the issues that we have. And there's only one issue to me that really comes to mind. And if Bill could elaborate on his position of the conflict between the two parties, I think we
Well,
need to.
I'm ready to vote on the motion.
Okay, I'd like to just make a couple of comments here. Normally, when you bid, in effect, that's what this is, a request for a proposal, you do it because the law requires it, or you do it because of price, and you think maybe you can't afford, or that there's a better price, or performance. And so far this evening, I haven't heard problems with any of those, other than the potential appearance of a client who is maybe somehow in competition with the other people that want to use the facility. I think we stay in control of that as a city, don't we? So it just seems like, I can't imagine the price being much less than what we're getting, because it seems like we're getting a good deal.
Well, we don't know what we have. We don't know until we ask. That's all I'm
Well.
saying. Let's do it in a measured way to
Okay,
get proposals.
so what did the motion end up being?
So real quick,
Ryan?
I just want to say, whatever we decide, however this vote goes, I think it's clear. I hope that if we do end up in an RFP process, that the music festival would be one of the proposals, and that this is not an indication, if I may put some words in there, there's nothing that's anything wrong, depending on how this goes, but this isn't an indication of anything the music festival is doing wrong, but Bill looking for other options. I don't know if it's necessary either, but I would say that I would hope that we would end up with the same contract we have or better, but it sure looks like this is as good as we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Again, you don't know until you ask.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
And so
Yeah,
that's
but
why
freq-
the motion right now is to have an RFP process for the next cycle, not the current one, and extend the current contract as recommended.
Okay, ready for a vote?
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
No.
Councilmember Blatz?
No.
Councilmember Francina?
No.
Mayor Johnston?
No. Okay, well, we'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
Move to
Thank you
approve,
for
item
doing a
J?
good job.
Okay?
Yeah.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second, what are we doing? What are we seconding?
Yeah. I-
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not,
Where are
so
we?
ordered.
Well, don't I get to vote on that?
What?
Don't I get to vote on that?
If you'd like to,
I would.
certainly. Okay. Call the roll
Wait, I don't know what we're voting on. I'm sorry.
Recommendation.
on the
I thought we did
recommendation.
vote 4-1.
Right, no, well, Bill's right. I mean, I always say, is there
Oh, I
any
see what you're
objection
saying.
to it? If
Yes.
not, so ordered, but there was an objection, so let's
Right,
have
that's
the
right.
roll call. Go on.
Record my vote, yeah.
Are we still on this?
Well, yeah, Jay,
We have to vote on the
We're
recommendation.
gonna vote on J.
accepting the recommendation from
Oh,
the committee.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes. Yeah, yes, 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 yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
No.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Okay, let's see. Get through my Somebody watered my agenda for me.
Is it
And I see evidence that it may be coming from my able assistant here.
yeah.
Okay, we have, the public hearing has now arrived. Now, let's see, municipal code on accessory buildings. How long do we think this is gonna take? Is this,
3 days.
It will be should be a very brief report from staff.
okay, okay, we will,
That's big.
let's go with the staff report.
All
and
right.
See how far we get.
Okay,
Because
so-
At 8 o'clock, we have public comment.
Right, so again, this is a public hearing, so we're recommending that the council open the public hearing. This is a text amendment to clean up some language related to accessory dwelling units. I'll have the city attorney briefly explain that. So again, if council is amenable, we will recommend that you introduce the proposed ordinance. It would come back for a second reading and adoption at a later date. The other matter before the council on this issue has to do with the timeline for the compliance program is due to expire. We are recommending that the council adopt a resolution that would extend the compliance program for another 2 years. That mirrors the 2-year program that was originally passed. So we're recommending that resolution be adopted. And then lastly, we're also asking for council if they want to discuss any other possible changes to the program and provide direction to staff. Mr. Attorney, could you give a brief summary of the changes that are proposed in the code?
Certainly. Briefly, what's before you, you've seen before. The changes from last time are highlighted in yellow in attachment A, and these are the changes proposed by Councilmember Wyrick as directed at the last time to work with myself and the community development staff. Staff supports the changes from Councilmember Wyrick. They are intended to clarify the definitions further in the accessory dwelling unit ordinance to extend the same allowances for home splits, which is an older type of ADU, less seen now because of the new state allowance for regular ADUs, but which was legacy language in this ordinance that had limits, half-acre minimum lot size only in the RO half, RO1, and RO4 zones, to delete the half-acre lot size minimum and replace it, the zone list, with the same list of zones as the other types of ADUs, which are all of the R zones, the OS, A, VMU, C1, and BP zones. Further to clarify additional definitions, and lastly, to clarify without any question that primary and accessory dwelling units can be provided either by public sewage or by a existing private sewage treatment system, i.e. a septic system, if that septic system is approved by the building official as compliant with all applicable regulations. That's what is proposed, and then, of course, the extension is
Now, does that just
resolution.
apply to the home split?
It would apply to anything.
It would apply to all the different types of ADUs, all 7 types.
Again, there are other regulations that evaluate whether a leach field or something,
Right, there are.
okay.
I think that's why the building official is in the language.
Correct. It would, rather than including in here the entirety of the septic system regulations, this simply requires that they meet those regulations, which, among other things, to require a leach field, it requires an adequate size, it requires that the septic system not be, for lack of a better word, full, and that it be maintained adequately. And that's tested by the building official evaluating city, state, and county environmental health standards.
There are existing septic in our city.
Okay. Any other question?
Well,
Randy?
just a question, are you done, Matt, are you done
Yes.
explaining? I just want to make sure that anything sanitation-wise does comply with the well, first of all, I want to start with Bill, thank you for going through this and cleaning it up. And Steve, thanks for staff actually presenting something that we can actually understand. I had 2 questions. The first one is, do the sanitation guidelines here meet the sanitation district's definitions that they've just approved recently? So we're not in any conflict with ADUs and the sanitation district? And
Well,
their,
We met with them in terms of, and Matt, feel free to jump in here, in terms of the certificates that we were going to be issuing for the accessory dwelling units to show that they were meeting the definitions in the code. So we did draw up some certificates that will be reissued to those folks. We had a conversation with the folks at the sanitary district on that. We showed them the certificates, asked them if they had any concerns with it. They said that they had no concerns with it. So those certificates are now ready to be issued. And we expect that should be able to solve the problem in terms of them being able to now take that and with that certification and then go back to the sewer district to be able to get their permits.
Okay.
And with respect to the sewer district fees, briefly, the sewer district, we have 7 categories of ADUs. The sewer district has really 2. Those that involve new construction and those that do not involve new construction. The sewer district has finally accepted what was clear in state law, that they don't have the power to impose a connection or capacity charge on ADUs that do not involve new construction, which includes some types of what we would call new ADUs, interior conversions, and also the compliance program units. And as Steve noted, the certificates that the city would issue evidencing approval have been reviewed and, as to form by Mr. Palmer, which he said he was okay with. So those ADUs should not be subject to capacity and connection charges. The other kinds of ADUs that involve new ground-up construction, the state does not prohibit OVSD from charging a capacity or connection fee, but it does limit the amount of the fee and the basis by which they impose that fee. And OVSD has stated that they are looking at their fees. How long that will take is an open question.
My question is, when this was originally drafted, was that drafted by the Building and Safety, by your office, Matt?
It was drafted by myself and the Community Development Director.
Right.
Okay, and so the kinds of changes that Bill is making are just merely clarification and some modest expansion of the, or liberalizing of the rule, is that correct?
In a nutshell, yes.
Right.
And is everybody pretty much in,
Right.
you know, we don't have like a commission or something that's recommended something different?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
No,
well,
these are
okay, great.
consistent. This final set of changes hasn't been reviewed by the Planning Commission, but
Correct.
it's consistent with their prior direction.
Right, okay, good. Okay, we ready to open the hearing?
Oh, can I ask I'll wait till after the hearing. I have questions.
Okay,
Okay.
so the public hearing is open. Do we have any cards? No? Oh, Bob, you're a card, yeah, right. And you and yourself.
Well, it's been a long, hard road. I think we had to have 3 or 4 state laws written in 25 different meetings, and we're finally going to get to the point where we can move on with these ADUs. What I'm going to ask for is that we've eliminated a giant excuse. I really think it was an excuse all along. I really don't think it was the reason the 400 or 500 of these non-permitted rental units within this city haven't stepped forward. I think it's because of lack of enforcement on the council, you folks. So we got about 400 or 500 of these things that haven't been through safety, haven't looked at it. We don't really know what's there. And I would hope now that the hurdle with the boogeyman with the sanitary district is no longer an excuse, that we take a look and make sure that these are somewhat compliant and somewhat safe. We have different levels. We have seven different series of these things, and we have different levels of compliance and codes and inspections that they have to meet. And so I would hope that the city would get on this thing and move along. We still have people in garages. We still got extension cords. We've still got people tapped off the gas line, off of the hot water heaters. We still have a lot of stuff out there, and we have an obligation for building and safety, and we need to make sure that these things are safe for people to rent. So, we got this one out of the way. No more excuse. I hope you go ahead and extend the compliance by a couple of years. And then there'll really be no more excuse. And then we can get the RANA numbers in, and we can make it safer and easier for people to rent here. And I think it'll be more affordable, because one of the things I hear is an excuse, kind of to stifle renters, like, well, you better not complain that the water heater doesn't work because this is an illegal unit, or you better not do about this, or you might lose the place you're living in. And so I see landlords holding that over people's heads. I also see that as an artificial way to keep the rents high, because if everybody could come and go and they were out there on the market, we had 500 more units out on the market, real units, not additional units. They're going to be the same recycled units. They count. But I think it'll solve an awful lot of problems. Thank you.
Bob, before you leave, the 500 units you're referring to, is this just a rough guess, an estimate?
This was put into our official record. We can get you a tape, CD.
Okay.
This was done when Carol Mayer Smith went ahead and accepted 477 additional units. And Jerry Kirschner was the city manager at that time. And we had a report presented to council 10 years ago when we did this, 8, 9 years ago when we did this. But yeah, that was the number that the city had in their agenda. So not my number, that's this city's number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I believe it's also in the housing element.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Randy?
Is that the only comment?
No,
Okay.
Okay, Dale?
do we have any more cards?
The card that Bob is, but
Yeah, okay.
I might just
Come
try
on,
this.
Dale.
I understand that it's with new construction that the sanitary department, district is able to attach the fee? Is that correct?
Mayor and Council, the question posed is, when can the sanitary district impose its fee? And the answer is, they can impose a connection or capacity charge on new ADUs, but it is limited to the reasonable cost of providing the service to that ADU, and it has to vary by either the square footage or the number of fixtures. They can't charge a pure per unit fee,
I see.
and their present fee has to be evaluated against that standard.
And then my other question is, and I haven't heard this addressed, I think there've been some fees charged on units that would probably should not have had that fee. Is that not true?
I'm not sure of the history of every individual unit.
And if it is
Certainly,
true?
if
do
it
they
is true, those
money
folks
back?
should pursue refunds with the sanitary district.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
So, Mayor, I just had
Mr. Quillisi had his hand up.
Quillisi, Mr. Quillisi. Another cardless
Cardless.
Right.
speaker.
guys.
No visa? Okay. Well, we set the precedent, I gotta quit doing that, but, you know,
Start using credit cards
if
instead.
you want,
I apologize, Mayor and Council. I didn't expect the topic to get this much coverage tonight. I just wanted to clarify again what Mr. McClary and Mr. Summers have said, and this is on a specific point that I clarified with the general manager of the sanitary district after the board meeting last night. And that is, if the city of Ojai gives someone a piece of paper that says, we recognize your structure, whatever it is, inside or outside an existing primary unit, as an ADU, and that, and that paper is presented to the sanitary district, then connection fees or capacity charges, initial capacity charges, not ongoing service charges, will be waived, period.
Thank you.
okay.
If we're done.
I've closed the hearing if
Okay.
we're gonna talk.
Great.
Since we've allowed people without cards to do it, are there any more people who would like to speak that did not turn in a card? Okay, well, the hearing is now closed and the council will deliberate. Randy, you,
So I'd like to address Mr. Daddy's concern about enforcement. And Matt or Steve can respond to this, I guess. What is the enforcement mechanism? Someone has to provide an application for a building official to actually go out and assess? Or do we still have the, didn't we have a person that was doing, working with people on ADUs and thank you. So who actually does this and addresses Mr. Daddy's concerns about power cords and, electrical, portal hookups?
There's
you
an-
know,
Right, so that inspection, it's actually, there's a team. It involves a member of the planning department as well as a member of the building department. In that particular case, that would be a member of what the building staff would be looking for, to make sure that the unit meets the standards of the compliance program.
Well, all I'm saying is Mr. Daddy just accused us of being negligent, and I just want to understand what we're being negligent in. So what is the process?
Well, I can't respond to what he's alleging unless we received a complaint or unless he's alleging that we have inspected units that, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure that
I
answers
think it
that
was
question.
clear what he was saying, and I don't think he said we were negligent, we just weren't doing it, and that it's.
Not doing it and doing it are
Okay,
two
is it,
different
but,
things.
but is it knowable? And I think that should be a conversation between the city manager and Mr. Daddy, who has information that will allow us to.
Well, I just get concerned when we have citizens come up here and accuse us of something and not being able to substantiate it in any way. To me, it's hearsay. So I'm just trying to understand the process. For us to address Mr. Daddy's concern, is the process through the application. So someone
Yes.
comes in, provides an application for an ADU, and then at that point in time, we set up and go actually out to the site and address
For a
what their
compliance
concerns
unit,
are
at
for a
one point,
compliance
there would
unit?
be an
Okay,
inspection,
yeah,
correct?
Bill, got.
And we are doing that.
I want to point out why it's important to move beyond, in my mind, a complaint-only basis for getting these units through the compliance program. I want to remind everyone, A, there's the health and safety issue. B, it is more and more important with every legislative season in Sacramento that we show performance on our arena numbers. That preserves our local discretion and control of our environment, of our community-built environment, to get our arena numbers up for structures that are already built. So it's, to do it on a complaint-only basis is probably not serving that end as well. And then finally, remember that now a motivation for someone to have an illegal unit after we've removed the sanitary district issue is they don't have to do a property tax assessment. So we're losing property tax revenues by not having more than just a complaint-driven program. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that a complaint-only driven program is probably something we need to move beyond for all those reasons.
Okay, this code enforcement is a separate topic tonight. It was, I mean, it's important, but it was merely being, as I understood it, suggested that if we extend this, and the speakers all seem to be in favor of extending it, that we be a little bit more aggressive in whatever we can do to get people to come in. They no longer have the sanitation issue or fee, but there are other economic reasons for wanting to stay below or off the grid, and so we can take that one up as separately. So is there?
Yeah, I want to speak to that. I know people who have what you could call an accessory dwelling unit that's not permitted. They're aesthetically pleasing, they're safe, but there's a fear, and one of these several people probably look through this, but it's just too daunting. They said, this is their exact words, "So far, I haven't seen anything that says I won't get in trouble for going public." And then they added, the city needs to release to the public an understandable statement so that the public knows that they won't get in trouble by going public with an unpermitted ADU. I don't know if the public really understands that there's 7 types of accessory dwelling units, or what we can, so that's not a complaint-driven system. It seems like we need to make clear, like last night at the Democratic Club, people didn't know that you could make your large home into 2 legal units, a duplex.
Okay, but-
There's just a lot that the public doesn't seem to understand.
Yeah,
So-
what you're saying is
Yeah.
correct, and then there is fear out there, but the topic before us is whether or not we wish to extend the amnesty program, so to speak, to
Definitely,
allow
yeah.
people to come in. If they don't come in, that's a separate question, and if you force them to come in through code enforcement, also a separate question. Question before us, and we need a motion, I guess, at
We'll
some
make a
point.
motion to approve recommendations.
Oh, I have one more question.
Okay, well, let's keep
Yeah.
talking, we just need to get the
I'm
motion
making
on
a
the
motion to
floor.
approve with the provision that we, future agenda item on on program performance.
Okay, well, we need to finish this up
Wait a minute.
first.
That's my motion, to approve the recommendation.
Okay, to approve the recommendation, okay, do we have a second?
I would do a second if I could, but I have questions about some of the language.
Okay, well, you'll have an opportunity for
Okay,
that.
I'll second.
So we got
Okay.
it moved and seconded.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, City Attorney, Mr. City Attorney, this allows modular homes, prefab homes, right? This proposal for accessory.
Yes, if they meet the state requirements for what the state terms as mobile homes,
Okay, so,
not tiny homes.
okay, so my,
Clarity.
tiny homes on foundation are permitted.
If they meet the state requirements
Yeah.
as a mobile home, which often exceed from a size perspective, some of the tiny homes the council was looking at previously.
Okay, but that's not, the question's not about,
I hate to interrupt you again, but there's something else near and dear to your heart.
It's 8 o'clock.
Is the public comment. Do you want to just hold them, we'll come back and do it, we'll have plenty of time to do this, and see if there are any people in the audience?
okay. I don't want to forget what my question is. Can we, do the people in the audience mind waiting 5 minutes?
Okay, I'm all right with that, if you're all right with that. I know you're the one that doesn't like it.
No,
but-
no,
Go ahead. You ask your
I'm
question
the one
before
that
you
wanted
forget it.
public comment before we got into any of this.
I know, that's
so-
not your choice
okay.
tonight, though, so.
So my question is this: can we put language in here that prefab homes, modular homes, have to be what are known as green sustainable homes? Because that's a category that uses non-toxic materials, because prefab homes are notoriously, or can be notoriously, made out of material that is toxic.
It would be within your power to do so, but I'm not sure what the definition of the term green or sustainable would be. We need to look at a definition for that term. I
Okay.
realize that's it's a term known in the community, but to write ordinance language, we have to be precise in our definitions.
Okay, well,
It is within your power, though.
if you Google it, then it takes you to sites that sell that they manufacture modular homes that have, it's like the green building standards for housing. It's green building standards for prefab homes. So I would like to, if we can legally do that, either put it in our recommendation here, or recommend it at the counter, or somehow communicate this to the public.
In the interest of kind of accomplishing what's proposed here, we might suggest that be structured as recommendations from the counter rather than a direct ordinance requirement, just because we don't have a definition presently available now, and it would take some time to develop one. That might accomplish the goal you're seeking, while also accomplishing the goals of moving the item forward.
Okay. Okay, my other question is concerns where it says owner occupied, and it has 3 exceptions. I don't know how much of this is written in stone, and I want to be really careful before I approve it. It says in attachment A, page 9 of 12, it says, an exception to owner-occupied property can be granted by the Community Development Director if the property owner is able to establish a bona fide hardship to the restrictions that follows. And then it lists, I believe, 3 things. The owner is hospitalized, owner is on active military duty, owner is deceased. But it seems to me that there are other exceptions. People go work overseas. There are other, it seems to me that we should consider, and we want to encourage this. We don't want to put impediments.
If you wanted to encourage it further than those exceptions, then you could delete the owner occupation requirement. It is not required, although it has been in the code for some time.
Okay. And because we're not talking about short-term rentals, we're talking about long-term.
Those remain separately prohibited.
Yeah. But so why is the requirement that the owner live in the house? What was the reason?
Without putting words in past councils and planning commissions, my understanding of the history of that requirement is a focus or a concern that if you have both the primary and the accessory unit both rented, then you lose some connection to the community and you lose some long-term character aspects of the community. That if you have one or other of the units rented, then the renter is much more likely to, for lack of a better word, do the right things, because the owner of the property will be present on the property.
Okay. But
Whether or not that is your concern is a.
Yeah, that is, well, it just so happens that I live on a property that has 3 units, and it previously had a property manager because the owner lives out of state. And 2 of these units are so small, they could be accessory dwelling units, and there's like a big house. And so technically, if she wanted to put another unit on the property, which she could do, it's two properties. There's one big house.
2 parcels.
2 parcels. It's 2 parcels. One parcel has 2 units. The other parcel has a large house. And I'm just using this as an example. But she lives out of state. The property's been in the family for, many generations. She could not build an accessory dwelling unit unless she moved to California. Is that correct?
She couldn't separately rent it. She could build it, but if she doesn't live on the property and doesn't meet the other 3 exceptions, then she wouldn't be able to rent it independent of living there. She could rent one of the 2
Okay,
units, but
so-
not both. Under the present rule, that can be lifted by the council as desired.
Okay. So how does the council feel about that?
Well, We've gone way over the 5
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
And
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
come back, so make
Okay.
a note to yourself for your questions, and we'll
Thank you.
continue. So we will now take public comment, and I have one card. Brian? We didn't make you stay till midnight this time.
Sorry, Brian.
That's okay. I think I've been here till midnight several times.
I know you have.
So I have my hat on right now as trustee for the Ojai Valley Museum, speaking for Wendy Barker, our executive director. As I know, Councilman Wyrick, I heard, was there. We opened the new exhibit, From the Earth, Ceramic Art, a week ago Friday. We're asking the fire chief to cover his ears because word was we had 340 people that were there. May have been more. There were some sneaking in the back door. Maybe our fire chief was there.
Great turnout, yeah.
Yeah, so very nice, very well received. Also, and that concluded the fire exhibit that we had that was very well received from coast to coast. So that's open. We encourage all to be there. Features 30 local ceramic artists plus Beatrice Wood, Otto Heino, and Frank Noyes. Our home, the city building, as you may know, just turned 100 last Saturday. They had an event from 3 to 5. I haven't been able to make these because we've been in Santa Maria attending those sweet little grandkids. We have a new mini exhibit that's on the church, wonderful artifacts that have been collected by individuals, mainly Mary Baker. So we have a mini exhibit in there featuring items from the original church. This Sunday, March 3rd, from 2 to 4 p.m., we're celebrating Beatrice Wood's birthday with Beto chocolate at the museum. I think I'm here. I love chocolate. Third Friday coming up, March 15th, 5:30 to 7:30, will feature a music van courtesy of the Ojai Music Festival and their Bravo program. Their instrument petting zoo is think about that, instrument petting zoo. I'm like, that's creative. Their instrument petting zoo is an opportunity to try out different instruments.
Oh, okay.
I know, I had to think about it too.
Close your eyes and really visualize that.
Yeah, Ryan, yeah.
Yeah, my 12-year-old or 11-year-old grandson plays the trombone. It's a pet in his household. Many other local businesses and galleries will be open again with Third Friday, which is going fabulously. I will point out, and again, Councilman Wyrick was there, that of those many folks that came for the opening for this exhibit, it was ranges from children all the way up. It wasn't just 340 of us gray hairs. So very well represented by the community and pulling in a great group of people throughout the community. And then again, tied in with Third Friday, which is very popular in our community. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, do we have any other cards at that end? All right, now we will come back. Susan, you
Okay.
still have the floor.
So we have to, in order to extend this, we have to do it tonight, correct?
Absent a special meeting, yes. And if you'll allow me one more comment.
Okay.
With respect to the deed restriction for owner occupation, the compliance program for those legalized units already does not require owner occupation. That's baked in the existing rules for the compliance units, the ones that are built illegally or without the benefit of permits and that are legalized under the rules of that program. Either unit, the primary or the accessory unit, both can be rented. One can be rented, the other as desired.
This is only new construction.
Okay, but on that point, there are, I believe, in Ojai, family homes with people that are currently living out of state for one reason or another, but they plan to come back when they retire. And when they retire, they may not even need this large family home. And so the way this reads, when they come back, if they wanted to increase our housing stock at this point in time, since they might not come back for another 10, 20 years, they could not, under the way, with this language, they could not build an accessory dwelling unit.
Not exactly. They could build the accessory dwelling unit at will, but they could only rent one of the two units out.
Yeah, I understand, but that's the point.
I realize
That's
the
point.
finances, but-
If you want to increase your housing stock.
And
you-
that the council does have the power to lift that requirement.
Okay, so how does everyone else feel about that? Lifting the owner-occupied requirement for the reasons I've tried to explain.
You make a motion without it, I think, Susan.
Okay, so okay, and then, okay, so hang on, and then my other going back to my other point, if we had more time to extend this, I would want language that would require green building standards. Because, I mean, this is becoming an increasing concern. If we, I mean, we're looking at something very serious. We want people to build attractive accessory, that's the goal. We want people to build accessory dwelling units, right? Is that the stated goal? Okay,
That's the goal
So-
expressed in the current housing element.
yeah. But it seems that we can't add that language due to the time constraint, the green language, due to the time constraint to extend this contract. We can't go.
You could always divide the ordinance and the
Resolution.
amnesty program extension. They don't have to be acted on together. The one that has the deadline is the amnesty program.
Okay, so that answers my question.
You could also direct staff to evaluate green building
Okay,
green building requirements and come back with that. And for what it's worth, the building code does have a component regarding green building standards that would apply to new ADUs or any ADU involving new construction, whether that's an interior conversion or a new ADU. That might, what I'm not sure is, would those requirements go as far as you might wish?
oh, yeah, would they go so far as to require those standards for modular and prefab homes?
No, the green building code would not apply to modular prefab. That's regulated by the state, and at the moment, the state does not regulate the materials except for some fire retardant aspects.
Okay, so with that understanding, could the motion be divided so that we extend the 2 years and then I'll make a motion to lift,
Well, we have a motion on the table, so.
Okay.
Okay, and repeat the motion, your motion, right,
My-
Bill?
My motion was simply to approve recommendations 1 through 5, 1 through 4, excuse me, recommendations 1 through 4. Number 5 is consider discussion, so recommendations 1 through 4.
Future agenda item on the program.
Yeah, but that's that's not, that's another issue, which we could bring up if we pass 1 through 4 on consider discussion of other possible changes. So my motion was to approve the recommendations 1 through 4.
does that include, I'm sorry that I'm not clear, but does that include the current language? Or?
Yes, that would be yes.
Okay, and so then it does seem that you need to amend your motion. I mean, that I would ask that for me to approve the motion as it stands, I would ask that you amend it.
In which way?
This
To-
whole, the action before us, that was brought before us at the last meeting, was to clarify some language in order to administer something that existed. In the meantime, we also have the compliance issue, which it will expire if we don't do it. So if we don't extend the compliance moratorium, kind of, what do you want to call it, amnesty program, then nobody will get to do anything under that.
That's right.
So
My
that seems like that's shouldn't be a problem in dealing with that part of it. Clarifying the thing shouldn't be a problem. We're now getting into going back and starting, adding new stuff, which is okay, but you can do that at any time. You don't have to do it tonight, and this is not the best venue.
We
in
could
which-
pass this motion, Souza, and then have other motions about number 5, consider discussions of other possible changes.
Okay.
So in other words, this motion could pass, and then we could get to point 5.
Right.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, I just wanted to.
Okay, is anything at this end of the table? Yes, Counselor.
How many applicants have been successful in this program, right? Well, let me make sure. This was first implemented in 2013, correct?
Yes, I believe that's a history.
Steve, anybody? Okay. And how many successful applicants have there been in the program?
That's not one, I apologize, that is not a number I know off the top of my head. I believe it's something in the tens, less than 50.
Okay, how many, and is that successful applicants or is that total applicants? Or
That's
do we know?
approved applicants.
Approved. Now, is there a number, do we know what percentage of approved applicants there are out of the total applicants?
No, because the program includes a confidentiality provision.
Okay, good.
Where
So
if
I
people
want
don't get too far, they don't get on the list.
And Susan brought that up. I want to make it clear, as part of this, there is clearly a clause in here that if a person in the public comes forward and reveals that they may have a situation to an ombudsman or anywhere else, that is going to stay confidential, will not go in the file and be recorded against their property in any way, and will not cloud the title in any way. Is that correct?
Yes, with possible 2 exceptions. One is an active threat to health and safety.
Okay.
And 2 is if there's another crime present, which
Okay.
sometimes happens.
So other than those exceptions, there would not be, the confidentiality would be held. So that there's a health and safety concern, and please reiterate, what was the other one again?
Another crime. So to use an
Crime, okay.
example, if somebody comes to the counter and says, I have an unpermitted ADU at 123 Main Street,
Okay.
how do I get it permitted?
Okay.
And then they're told the process and they decide, you know what, no. For whatever reason, then staff won't mark down that address, they won't be put on the list.
Okay.
But if they go that step further and there's an inspection and it's shown that it is wildly unsafe, would be red tagged, then that will not be forgotten. Then that will be fixed. But at that point, even though that person is going to have to spend some money on improvements, the net health and safety is improved. But if the initial inquiry, the application request, and the conversation with the ombudsman don't result in a tag or a flag recorded against the property that, oh, we know they have an unpermitted ADU. It's just the safety aspects that might be pursued further.
Well, after that explanation, I can't imagine why any of the public would be concerned, Matt. The answer is right. It's confidential unless there's some really pressing health and safety concern. Everything's held confidential. Regular, run-of-the-mill, normal code violations, failures to get permits, that's held confidential. You can go into this process feeling confident that it's not going to work against you just because you're informing the city that something's not permitted. Is that correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
many of the existing unpermitted ADUs are folks who had a contractor, for lack of a better word, safely install a stove and a sink. They just never got permits
Okay.
in a back bedroom. That's fairly common.
We're sort of drifting back into the
Yeah, well,
effectiveness of the program rather than whether we're going to extend the program.
I was just trying to make
Yeah.
a point.
So-
Well, but we've had, since 2013, in the teens of applicants who've successfully gone through this.
Something in that neighborhood.
Is this an issue of all this time we're spending is a complete waste of time for 12 units over 6 years?
It's the potential, it's the issue.
I mean,
And
why-
we were
well,
inhibited
what-
by the sanitary district's charge.
Right, but clearly the language of this resolution is not the problem that's keeping people out of it. And we don't know if it's sanitation, but has there been any consideration prior to now about better advertising and making it aware to the public? Because there's really this program is a lot of thought, it's a lot of pages, it's a lot of work, and it's a really good thing. But people are scared, there's a lack of understanding, and there's been no great communication to the public to get this thing
Right,
Right,
off.
but
And
but
it's
do
6
we
years.
want to extend it?
Right.
And it sounds like we do. We just
do.
like to
Let's
be
just-
more effective at it.
Well, I would also.
And that's number 5 is the effectiveness discussion.
Okay,
Right,
good.
and as part of that, I don't mind extending it, but my question is, what is extending a deadline that's been out there for extending something that's gone on for 6 years and not been successful is doing the same thing again?
Not with the sanitary district change.
Well,
There is a change of
I
economics.
am well aware of that change. I am very well aware of that change, but that I don't necessarily know if that is the only reason out there. But I would say that at this moment, if we're continuing extending it, is it the right time to consider reworking our getting this information out to the public?
Right, that's number 5.
Marketing of it.
That's
Right,
marketing.
okay, that's number 5.
That's
Yeah.
number 5.
Randy?
Okay, let's,
So just, Ryan, I'll chime in. I'm not sure what the 2-year extension, if we want this community ADUs for now and into the future, why put a date on it? Why not just say that this ordinance just stays open? And I don't know why we need a 2-year or 1 year or 3 year. Is that a carrot that says if you don't get it in, it's gonna expire and we're gonna go after you?
Originally, the idea was that it was, as all amnesty programs are, get in on it now and all will be forgiven, with the exception of minimum health and safety. That was a benefit. Now the world has changed, the state laws have changed, but on the other hand, just having an open-ended thing forever, you can keep this for as long as you want and come in when you please. It seems to me a shorter deadline might be better with an effective program of marketing.
Well, I guess my concern is again, the why. You have a date. If everything is in, behind the curtain, all the discussions that take place, can't go back on to the homeowner. Again, I'm just lost on a time frame. There was no repercussions for coming in, and there's nothing that says, well, the program's only 2 years, and if you don't get it in, you won't ever get it. because the goal is to a continuation of ADUs in our community.
Okay, well, that raises a question that, Bill, you're the one who's been bird dogging this. Do we have something from housing, the state housing authorities or whoever governs the RENA numbers that say that getting bootlegs or substandard properties brought up to code or being made legal non-conforming, that gets a credit on the RENA numbers, or are they going to?
It counts as RENA, at least it has, I believe it still does. That's a
HCD
SCAG and HCD ruling that it counts, right?
Right. HCD and SCAG have previously counted legalized accessory dwelling units as housing against our RENA requirements in the moderate income category, not in the very low nor the low, but in the moderate income category.
Right, it automatically gets in that
And
category.
in part, we've previously counted in the past housing element that capacity is part of our capacity for meeting RENA numbers. But in terms of housing production, they do count every legalized ADU count, or whether legalized or built ground up, does count against our moderate income housing requirements because ADUs, at least under present law, are presumed to be more affordable at the moderate income level.
Okay, well, to move this along.
I wasn't even finished, so I would
Oh,
appreciate it.
okay, go ahead.
You guys keep telling me number 5, but isn't this the time that we consider the other possible changes to the program?
Well, my point is, we pass 1 through 4, then number 5 would be open for deliberation, right now.
Okay, so apparently you want to deliberate right now, but you don't want to talk about it right now. I mean, why don't we
I-
talk about that right now?
No, my motion is to move forward on the mechanics of 1 through 4.
Okay.
Then, once we've put in place, yes, this is the program, then we talk about 5, how to implement it and market it.
Oh, okay, that's, okay. My last question is on attachment C. What is attachment C? Is that a picture of our current webpage?
Attachment C should be a copy of the guidelines for the second unit compliance program, which would be, this is the guidelines for the program that would be extended for another 2 years.
Is this
under
a
the
copy
present
of the current
proposal.
webpage as it exists? I mean, I
I'm
don't know
not
what-
sure what's on the webpage. This is the copy I have the last time we rewrote this after council made amendments.
Okay, I just wondered
Should be the
because
same on the webpage.
It looks like it's on the webpage, and it clearly indicates that this is continued until 2021.
Oh, this is the draft. Sorry, this presumes, this is what you would be approving.
This is what
Well,
we'd
the
be-
draft is this ordinance resolution.
No, there's
This-
2 drafts. There's an ordinance and a resolution. The resolution has an Exhibit A, which is the amended guidelines. That's attachment B, page 2 of 2,
Okay,
section
so
3.
this would be though,
So together, they form what would be approved if you approved recommendation number 4.
and is this consistent with what, I mean, is this what it looks like if you look up second dwelling compliance program in Ojai on our
The only difference between this one and the webpage is the one on the webpage has it limited ending March 8th, 2019.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
Let's vote.
So it goes back to Bill's motion. We had any other questions? If not, let's go ahead and have a vote on that.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
Yes,
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Now, item number 5, when it says consider discussion of other possible changes, do we have changes that are proposed or just simply questions and concerns that we could carry to the next meeting or a future meeting and to continue amending? Is that,
yeah, well,
because we're not going to get it solved tonight,
Okay.
just off the top of our
I
head.
think it might be that we continue that item to either the next or the next, after the next meeting for everybody be prepared for that discussion.
And then that's going to require, in the case of, Susan's concern about green.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is it possible for us to allocate a budget tonight and have staff come back with how they'd like to spend $2,500 or $5,000 on advertising the program?
Sure.
As an addition to it?
Sure, make a motion.
Can we decide on an amount, and then that'll give you guys give the staff some guidelines so they'll know where to put it? Is that able to?
Well-
General fund
But-
somehow?
but
The-
Yeah, I don't think we're going to amend the budget right now. If there is money in the budget to do something like this, I know the BAB has suggested things like this in the past. Is there any money in the budget, Steve, for this? If not, we'll just have to
Not-
put it on the agenda for a discussion.
Right. No, there's nothing specific in the budget for marketing.
and I don't really want to do that until we iron out some of the glitches, have language that specifies that modular homes, prefab homes are, green sustainable homes, however we want to define that. Because the definition is out there, and the standards are out there. The descriptions are out there. I'm not completely prepared. I have an example, but.
That's why I thought maybe we could be all prepared to take up these
Yeah.
issues at the
Or
future.
direct that question to
Or,
planning.
or staff could,
We're happy to bring back proposed definitions for a green building standard. I
apply
would
to prefab.
ask if we had, how the rest of the council felt on that matter.
But on the green, I don't know enough about what's being proposed to have an opinion right at this.
Okay,
I mean,
we can bring
it
sample
sounds
language
like
forward.
green sounds
certainly.
good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's.
No, they're energy efficient homes. They're made out of material that's non-toxic.
Yeah, but
No,
those
that-
kinds of things, Susan, or that's a very large,
Well,
that
at least- it's
are
at least-
non-flammable. I
it's-
mean, there are a lot of good.
It's an attempt, and I mean, it's something to research, if we're going, it just seems,
So tell us how your vision of how this is applying to ADUs. What are you
Because-
trying to do with this? Are you trying to say that all ADUs will be green compliant? What are you
Yes,
trying to
yes,
say with this?
yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Yes,
I
that
think that
seems
goes
to-
against the spirit of being as broad as we can to allow
Right.
ADUs. That makes it
That's
very
placing a
narrow.
limitation on it.
There is a movement for something called decarbonization of buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that goes along with what you're talking about. So that really is sort of amending the building codes. I don't think we necessarily want to apply it just to an ADU and let the main house.
Originally, I wanted to apply it to prefab and to, modular, the homes that you purchase and put together, because if you look it up, you can buy, the ones that are advertised as green, sustainable, modular homes. And they provide a definition, they explain exactly what that means on the websites.
So, Susan, just another question. I'm just trying to gather information from you. Right now, if someone is buying a modular home, can't they purchase a green versus a standard on their own? It doesn't need to be in an ordinance. It could be, like someone suggested, an over-the-counter brochure or a handout that says, here's another option available to you.
That's correct, it could be, but I'm saying that as a city, why don't we take a stand and do the right thing, just like we've done with electricity,
Well,
It's just one more step
I
in the
think the
right
concern
direction.
is that we're trying to encourage these things, but if one puts too many conditions upon how they're encouraged, will discourage what they're going to do with regard to additional houses.
Well-
I think we should educate it. I think we can advise at the counter and even lobby for it, but if we're going to do
I
that,
don't think it's that complicated, because it's already available, it's not that much more expensive. It just, but that's my opinion. If I can't get support, then I will settle for what you're suggesting.
Susan, I think it's that everybody supports it. It's the right idea in maybe the wrong form, because it's just doing the ADU compliance and the terms of it are just significantly different than the building materials issue and other stuff. It's not that anybody disagrees. In spirit, I think everything you said is correct. It's just that this is just about continuing a program for these structures that have been out there that are trying to become compliant without having to pay extraordinary fees and some of the other stuff in an amnesty program to get them on the books, to get them compliant. And it's just not really the type of time where we would consider how they're made and what they're made of. That's kind of a building code question and not an ADU approval question. And that's really
No,
where
it's-
everybody is.
I was originally only talking about the prefab and modular homes, because we're going to probably get a lot of those.
Right, but there's,
And that we just, even if we don't define it, we can put that in that language in the code. Is this card, were you wanting to speak? Is this-
we've closed the public
We've
hearing.
closed the
We're at
public hearing.
deliberation now.
Okay.
We need to kind of bring the first part of this to a conclusion.
I just want to say this. I know we've dragged this on, but I'm going to make this
Yeah,
clear.
Okay.
I completely disagree with us extending this tonight and kicking down the road how we're actually going to get people to sign up for it. We've had 6 years of no compliance, really, nobody really engaged in this program, and here we are continuing it again, but we're not willing to talk about how we're going to try and make the public receptive to it and actually engage in it. And we can bring
certainly-
it back at another meeting.
I would
but-
welcome a motion for right now if you want to make one.
Well, I thought I asked that and everybody had decided we wanted to move on. I wasn't
No.
a dead horse.
What about the part about owner occupied, because that's an impediment.
maybe what we need, if there's this much to talk about, is to have a workshop just on that part of it.
All right, I'll make a
Right now,
motion
you're-
that-
did we agree that we were going to extend
Yes.
the program to give people the option? It doesn't mean anybody's
No, I
gonna
know,
come
I
in.
know.
And then it's up to us and to the staff and to those in the community that are supportive of this to help us figure out a way to make it happen. And some of it could be brutal. We've got to be careful how we do it.
Well, I'd be for a workshop, although I don't know what other options there are for marketing it. I tried to spend some money that was killed, so I don't know other.
No, you didn't make a motion.
Well, it was-
it's
not a-
making a motion in a council meeting like this off the top of our heads
Right.
for things that have been discussed at length.
Yeah.
We can go back and read. There's already a body of information on people who have spent a lot of time on this. All we have to do is say we'll fund it.
We need a
And we've
program
got a budget
relaunch, I
coming up,
completely
so we,
agree, but let's get it on at a time certain agenda and have some proposals, vote on them. I agree.
So, Mayor, I think Steve wants something to say, and I'd like to speak after him.
Well, just to follow up on that, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I would say if we try to calendar something, come back at the second meeting in March, staff can do its work. We can come back with some options on how you can market the program better. We could even come up with a potential budget on what we would think would be necessary to achieve that.
Thank you, that works for me. I wish we didn't have to do it at a later meeting, but I will accept that.
Okay.
And of course, if council wants to do a workshop, we could schedule a workshop as well if you didn't want to do it back
No,
on
we don't
that
need a
day.
workshop
Got it.
if this is
Okay.
the only
So I
point.
have one more comment that's in conjunction with ADUs, and that's just workforce housing in general in this community. And I think along with ADUs that we need a broader discussion. We may even want to put together a committee to actually look at this and address it. But there's a lot of needs in this community greater than just ADUs. ADUs are a part of the fix. But there's a lot of things that we need to identify, and there's a lot of different methodologies that are out there to support the community in doing ADUs or doing, any other type of housing that's gonna, one, enhance rain and numbers, but more importantly, enhance the livability and the adverse conditions that a lot of our workforce deal with on a day-to-day basis. So along with what Ryan's suggesting, I'd like to suggest that we actually, when we come back and discuss this, that we be prepared to discuss another committee that's gonna look at ADUs and workforce housing as a whole in our community. And that might in turn, Ryan, enhance the discussion and the production of more ADUs in this community.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that we're all on the same page. We want to see people accessing this program to increase housing in Ojai, regardless of the rain and numbers. That's a benefit, but it's really a need in our community that's substantial, and we can't have programs that we spend this much time worrying about for 6 years that have almost no. And yeah, I appreciate where sanitation is on it, but maybe that means it's time to reach out to sanitation and work together in trying to promote this, because everybody's on the same page now. But let's make it clear to people, there should be no question in the community that it's confidential, it's good for your property if you fall under these circumstances, it's good for the city, and we're offering this as amnesty comes with a word that means, hey, don't be stupid. We shouldn't have to continue this for 30 years to get everybody compliant at some point. So we're failing in getting the message out, because this is a well-written, well-intended ordinance that's not getting access. We got to make sure we put a fire under it to get people out there and doing it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have concluded that staff's gonna do a little,
We'll do a little dance and
come
do a little
back-
researching. We'll come back on,
with
Second meeting in March.
we'll come back on the
You
23rd of
can look at
March.
some of the minutes from the
Mr.
BAB. They
Mayor,
talked
I'm
about
not
it
done.
extensively.
I'm still, I know you want to end this discussion, but could we either strike number 3 about the requirement for owner occupied, or could we say owner occupied or property manager? What-
Susan, I'd like to see staff bring back in March the same thing, a discussion on that.
Yeah.
That'll
Bring
be
back some
part
more
of it?
information on that, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
Yeah,
let's-
if we have suggestions to improve this, then make up a little list and hand it into the staff ahead of the meeting. And then the attorney can tell us what we can and can't do and how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Right, and just quick housekeeping on, and then the ordinance was introduced, so we
Yes.
would still bring that part back at the next meeting for adoption. Then we'll
Yes.
come back with this other, at the,
And that could go in the consent calendar, it's a second reading.
got it.
Okay, is that going to require a second or third reading as a result of making any change, or is that?
We did not make any changes tonight on the
No, not
ordinance as
tonight.
it was
I'm saying
introduced.
on these other things, I thought you were referring to.
So that would be a further text amendment.
I think that'd be a further ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Right, good. Okay, does that take us to the next item then? We've exhausted this one.
Beat that horse down, didn't we?
Right. Okay, we are now on item number 3. The introduction of an ordinance amending the cultural and historic preservation ordinance of the municipal code. Staff report. And I have 3 cards of people who'd like to address the subject.
A very brief staff report. Mayor and Council, before you is the latest and hopefully final iteration of the long-awaited amendments to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. This you've seen before a few times, and it was most recently reviewed, edited, and recommended by an ad hoc committee, and also reviewed and approved, reviewed and recommended for approval by the Historic Preservation Commission. The ad hoc committee's amendments strengthen, clarify, and improve it. The overall goal of the amendments in kind of 3 bullets is 1, to strengthen the ordinance protections for landmark properties and similar structures, to clarify the review authorities and the lines of who approves which agencies and bodies within the city approve what type of projects, to set standards for historic resources reports, and to divide the current single permit type into a 2-tier process where you have major work permits required for work that is that might affect a character defining element of a landmark, and minor work permits reviewed and approved by the community development director and not the full HPC for other work on landmark properties that won't affect a character defining element, with a clear definition for ordinary repair and maintenance, defined as work done on a landmark property that is of the same visual appearance as present, allowing yet a lower level of review for that type of work. The goal being to facilitate active maintenance and improvements of historic properties in a way that preserves their historic character, while ensuring that homeowners and commercial property owners are able to make changes and thus might be more willing to landmark properties that presently aren't landmarked. Thank you.
Okay. Just a minute. Please, Brian, I'll get to you. I will treat you with respect. Please, wait just a minute. Let the,
I was just asking if you're gonna put Luke on the phone call.
He's available to call in if needed. It's up to the council.
Sorry, I was here when they were setting it up. I didn't mean to interrupt you, I just.
okay, we're trying to go on process. Okay, you finished what staff report is? Okay.
Yes, we're done.
Should Luke be on the phone?
That's what Brian's wanting to check on.
Oh,
Just a reminder.
was that the plan?
Is-
That Luke was going to be on the phone?
The main item that Luke had been intended to join us for was the M1 MPD item. This item
Okay.
has mostly, it predates Luke's tenure with the city.
Okay,
I have
okay.
spent the most time with it, and I'm deeply familiar with it and available to answer any questions. Of
Thank
course,
you.
we can call Luke if needed.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, this is an ordinance, introduction of an ordinance. Does it require a public hearing yet, or are we continuing the public hearing from before?
It doesn't require a formal public hearing because it's not in the zoning code, but of course you have to take public comments.
Right, okay, I was gonna go to that. And, Brian, you can ask your questions, make your suggestions.
So, again, I apologize. I thought I was here when they were calling Luke
Okay.
to make sure it worked.
He's trying to do a good deed.
Sorry.
I didn't want you to have apoplexy here.
I
You're
didn't want the
you're
meeting
never
to
shy,
finish and
right?
Luke never got
You're
called.
never shy, yeah.
Sorry. He's watching. Good point. Anyway, just here, I've been here a few times before. Just 2 quick comments. One is under commission recommendation, it says, the Historic Preservation Commission further concurred in approval after it reviewed the revised proposed ordinance reflecting the changes made by the council-created ad hoc committee. If you'll remember in the September meeting that it was sent to the ad hoc committee, part of the discussion was whether it was going to come back to the Historic Preservation Commission, and the vote was that it was not going to come back to the Historic Preservation Commission. And so at the ad hoc committee, I asked our ad hoc committee if we could allow it to just go to the Historic Preservation Commission as kind of a deferral or respect, just so that they could hear it. It was presented to them just as an informational purpose. It wasn't presented to them to get
approval or disapproval. And so when I see that it says further concurred in approval, that wasn't one of the action items of that. So again, we told the HPC that if they had concerns with what was being presented tonight, for them to come and express those concerns individually. The other thing is that, and you'll remember this in our joint meeting in section 4-8.09, Declaration of Landmarks, there was the question on vote. Again, when we did the Terramina, it was one vote, and that vote, if you were an owner and you had 6 parcels, you got 1 vote. If you were a couple that jointly owned 1 parcel, you got 2 votes. So that was a big issue. When we talked about this in the interest of fairness, I kind of resorted back to the lights on your street, that it was a 1 property, 1 vote. Again, we reviewed that with the State Historic Preservation lady. She said, no, that's not in keeping with the historic standards. In discussing with Commissioner Convery, she pointed out that there's a reason why they do it with just the single vote, and that so that people don't then come in and buy up properties to, in going on a 1 vote, 1 parcel to influence the outcome. And so my recommendation is to make a change in section 4-8.09 to go back to what's in keeping with the.
Let's find it. Where is it?
Sorry, I'm running out of time.
Where is it?
Okay.
No,
Yeah, well,
where are you?
4-8.09. If you go into the 4th paragraph,
What page?
page
Okay, I'm looking at it.
9 of 21 or 3-35.
I remember that.
And Commissioner Wyrick is completely familiar. He was there for the discussions.
Okay. Where's this?
I want you to summarize your comments. You were saying that you wanted to go back to, go ahead.
Go back to what the Office of the State Historic Preservation says, which is 1 vote. If there's an individual that owns 5 parcels, they get 1 vote. If, again, there's a husband and wife or a couple that jointly own a property, a single property, they get 2 votes. Again, that's how the Office of the California State Historic Preservation has things listed.
Question?
Bill?
So that would also allow, let's say that someone has kids and they split the property up further, that would be more votes on that parcel.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I know it's confusing. All I'm recommending is that that's one place where I would actually change the language back to what the code had originally stated. And again, Mr. Summers can give you an update on that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Ben?
Happy to speak to the question. So what's the present proposed language from the ad hoc committee is that it'd be 1 vote per parcel. So if you own 4 parcels, you get 4 votes. That the other language that was previously in the ordinance was 1 vote per owner. So 1 person owns 5 parcels, they get 1 vote, and 1 parcel is owned by 5 people, they get 5 votes. Both are legal. It's really about how you wish to set the requirement of what you value more, individuals or owners, or value is probably the strong term, where you wish to put the line. I do respect the state's comments, but they don't have control over your municipal code. You do.
If I may, real quick.
Okay, do I understand that it is permissible to do, as Commissioner Convery had suggested, 1 vote per parcel, the way frequently the protest hearings are
Right.
conducted?
It's the same model as a Melrose district or a two-attain protest process. That's definitely permissible. And for what it's worth, this is a protest process for same kind of thing, a majority protest against a proposed historic district.
Matt, what happens if it's 1 vote per parcel and they're joint tenants?
Then they have to share the vote depending on however they existing share their arrangements.
So you can have half a vote?
It would have to be calculated up. If they couldn't agree, then we wouldn't take fractional votes. It'd be 1 vote per parcel. They'd have to sort out how they want to do it.
So if
it's
you're
a
in-
pure 50-50 ownership and one's up and one's down, then I suppose we'd record it.
They cancel each other's vote.
I think it'd probably be a null, but that's not
That sounded very official.
something
probably.
we've thought through in detail, but we can certainly think through it.
Or you give each 1 vote. I mean,
If you
honestly,
make it
we
one
don't
vote
know.
per owner, you get them one vote each.
Well, as the only person up here who's ever represented a historic district, that ended up being a big question, so.
Well, and it's worth noting that in that context, the district had one owner who owned a number of parcels and was opposed.
Yep.
That also one is already approved.
Okay,
There's no
I've got
change
a
there.
couple more comments from the public. Tom Francis.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Johnston and council. I appreciate all of you for your service. Thank you for being here tonight. Here I go. As proposed, the draft ordinance weakens rather than strengthens historic preservation in Ojai. Here's why. A list of discretionary actions the council can take in relation to historic sites, such as allowing discretionary lot splits, increasing the maximum allowable size of an accessory dwelling unit, waiving city permits, fees, parking requirements, signage rules, adjusting setbacks, lot coverage requirements. This is all new language that was not in the ordinance before. I don't understand where it came from. What does this language have to do with historic preservation? It doesn't make sense. In my mind, the way I see it, this is simply a Christmas list for a developer that wants to significantly alter a historic site to maximize financial gain. This is not good for Ojai. There is no question that this council has considerable discretion over land use decisions. There is no need to make this point in our historical preservation ordinance. So I respectfully request that you guys remove this language, this proposed language, this laundry list, this gift list from the historical preservation ordinance, because you guys already have discretion to do all those kinds of things. You can do CUPs, you can do lot splits, you can all do all that stuff. It doesn't need to be suggested in our historic preservation. It doesn't belong there, and it bothers me. That's why I'm here. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to bring up is, I'm sorry, I'm just emotional. I really care about Ojai. I really do. It's a special place. That's why I live here. And I think our historic preservation ordinance is sacred. And this is not the right language. Okay, so anyway, the last thing is this minor work permit issue. Community development director can potentially approve a minor work permit. My only question is that going to be publicly noticed? In other words, if a historic property owner or manager or whatever comes to the community development director and says, hey, we're going to do some minor work, we're going to just paint, blah, 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 and can you go ahead and approve this? Is the public going to know that's happening, or is it just done where we have no knowledge of it, and then potentially an unscrupulous landowner or manager can go in and gut the place under a quote-unquote minor work permit? It just seems like it's leaving a big old door open for an abusive landowner. That's it. Thank you.
Mayor, can someone respond to that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was
Release?
going to wait until we were concluded the
All right,
public hearing.
those are good points.
Okay, yeah, we should come back and,
Okay.
explore
Yeah.
that. I have one more card. Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Quillisi, West Eucalyptus Street in the city. I rise to speak on one point only in here. At your last council meeting, item 4, this is on February 12th, you talked about consideration of modifications to commissions and terms of service. And I understood that staff was going to go off and do some work. I thought that topic was coming back this time. And I look forward to seeing it another time. I'm not here to talk about the size of the HPC, but I do rise to talk about your paragraph 4-8.03, the second sentence. It says, a quorum shall be 4. I talked about this with regard to the Planning Commission the last time. If you changed the Planning Commission to a 5-member commission, whether by attrition or whatever, and you left a quorum at 3 and allowed 2 non-residents to be on the commission, then you could have a quorum that was a majority of non-residents. This provision, 4-8.03, allows the same thing. You could have a quorum of 4,
And
4-8.03.
Page 3-6.
Attachment A, 2 of 21.
It's basically unchanged
3-6.
language. That's the existing language.
And I raise the same concern if you have an allowance of 3 non-residents and a quorum of 4, then you could have a quorum making rules for this city that consists of 3 non-residents and 1 resident. That does not seem fair to me. And I would ask that you modify that, and one way would be to say a quorum is 4, but no quorum shall consist of a majority of non-residents. Then you could have 2 and 2, or you could have 3 residents and 1 non-resident, and that kind of language could work for any of the other commissions, whether they're 5 or 7 member commissions. But I see a strong argument for saying that we should not have a majority of people who do not live in the city making rules for people who do. Thank you very much.
Okay. And of the commissions, how many, this organization is an advisory, right? It doesn't make the decision.
The HPC does make final decisions on most work permits. They're all, of course, appealable to the council.
Correct.
Okay.
This is language that's pretty much common to all the 7-person commissions.
And that the language in section 4803 regarding the commission structure has not been changed. The proposed amendments focused on the rest of the ordinance.
Okay, so that will be an issue that if there were to be a change, right now, that's not possible, correct?
No, it's open to change. I'm just saying
Right,
it's not a modification from existing, that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
so I have no issue adding that language to it.
Well, we still have public hearing.
Right, we're done.
No, we don't, we're
done?
We've got all the cards, but
Okay.
is the suggestion that was just made, is that you can work that out?
Yeah, that would be legal. It'd be something, 4 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum. However, no quorum shall be a majority of non-residents.
Right, it's pretty simple.
That's within your power to do.
And that item is scheduled to come back at the next regular council meeting.
That's all I'm
Okay.
planning. Okay.
May I comment?
Yeah, you know, address the questions
Yeah, I
raised.
could,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, Bill.
If that's in order.
Yeah.
Okay. The comments were about section 4-8.11, city funds and incentives. And I stand to be corrected, but since I chaired this committee and it involved Luke and 3 members of the existing Historic Preservation Commission, the reason that language was put in there was basically to get into a more active mode of incentives for historic preservation. In fact, these are things that Mr. Connolly brought up as examples of things that are done in other ordinances in other cities. And I want to read the whole section, 4-8.11, Part C. The council may, in accord with the general plan and other applicable law, offer landmark owners incentives to preserve, rehabilitate, restore, or adaptively reuse a designated city landmark, which may include such incentives as, in the list that Mr. Francis went through. So the idea is to be explicit with tools that would be available for serve the overall goal of preservation. So it's not that you're creating any kind of an entitlement. You're creating a listing of tools for the purpose of historic preservation. So I guess I'm not quite sure I understand the concern in the sense that when you look through this, the idea is that if there's a situation that's impeding preservation, that the council, as Mr. Francis says, always has the option to take action. However, this says explicitly it has to be in accord with the general plan and it has to be specifically for promotion of incentives for achieving the end of historic preservation. On terms of the minor work permit, right now there is nothing. And so what this provides is a procedure where there is oversight that currently does not exist. And we struggled and, again, came up with what we believe is a procedure that is reasonable, but nevertheless puts in place oversight that currently does not exist. And there was a strong feeling that we should be explicit in terms of a difference between minor and major. And also the Historic Preservation Commission is informed of the minor work permits in the process. So that was.
Okay,
that
Bill,
was-
before you leave that, on the minor, you say it's not covered right now.
There's nothing right now.
And that means what? Does that mean that everything's a major work permit, or?
We don't
that-
have either one. A lot of the purpose of this ordinance was to kind of close a loophole in terms of. And clarify how you handle maintenance and repair
Right.
of historic properties, and we really didn't have that wasn't really addressed in the current ordinance. And so.
What were all those arguments about up on Foothill at the Libby House?
Well, that's probably the motivation. That was one of the motivations for doing this.
Okay.
And I would invite Brian to speak to it. He's had more experience with me than I have.
Well, you're saying that there wasn't a rule that said you,
There wasn't a set procedure, and the experience with Libby and some other historic properties is what was motivating to get into the process of looking at this ordinance to clarify and be clear.
but I thought earlier when I mentioned something about making final decisions, wasn't it work permits on historic?
Yeah, the HPC has the power at the moment to make final decisions on work permits. There's only the one category. Any work that isn't ordinary repair and maintenance requires approval by the full commission. That's the present rule. There have been fights in the past over whether or not a project constituted ordinary repair and maintenance or constituted
Right.
something more requiring HPC approval. There have been some debates about that particular question.
The issue is what we tried to do is really define repair and maintenance so we don't have a loophole in that where people can change the character of an historic landmark property by just claiming it's ordinary repair and maintenance. And there's been some issues.
Okay, so is ordinary repair and maintenance considered to be a minor work permit?
Yes.
No,
Well,
no.
in some cases.
Ordinary repair and maintenance that meets that definition, it would not require approval by the HPC.
In the current.
Nor,
Right. The proposed is to have it go run through the community development director.
exactly.
And there currently is no procedure for that.
Right,
And then
that's the
but
one.
Ordinary repair and maintenance is different than minor. The proposed ordinance creates three categories.
Right.
Okay.
Ordinary repair and maintenance, if it's like for like, then you're okay. You probably need a building permit and director approval. If it's a minor work permit, then if something more than ordinary repair and maintenance, but you're not doing a full scale, you're not affecting a character defining element, then you need director approval and historic assessment.
But the key there
And
is that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, right now, ordinary repair and maintenance just goes to the building department if it requires a permit. This explicitly brings in, the building the building department has to communicate with the community development department about the issue.
Yes, the two are connected now.
And they weren't previously.
Okay, but the concern about the creating a possible loophole with the minor work permit, is there an example of what that means, the difference between the changing the character? How do you do that?
An example, so landmarks have defined character defining elements. So to use an example, say you had a house that is landmarked because of its facade. That's what was defined as the character defining element in the landmark. If they propose to do an addition out the back, at the moment that would need a major work permit.
Be major.
Requiring a review by the commission. This approach would say that would likely be a minor work permit, not requiring commission review and approval because the work is on the backside. And in this example,
No, well,
perhaps that's a bad.
if you look at
that's a bad-
4.8.15, attachment A, page 11 of 21, permits for work
minor.
affecting landmarks. Approval of a major work permit by the Historic Preservation Commission or the Council on Appeal shall be required before any of the following actions may be taken for a landmark property or historic district that can impact a character-defining element, either visually or physically. Number one, new construction, addition, demolition, or relocation.
And then look further, approval of a minor work permit, the next section, required for exterior alteration of a landmark that won't, if the area of alteration is not a character defining element, it will not impact a character defining element visually.
Right.
So in
No,
my
no.
hypothetical, if the facade is what is landmarked, that's the character defining element. If you do an addition at the back that's not visible from the front, you need a minor work permit,
Okay.
not a major work
But
permit.
again, that's exterior alteration of a landmark property. If the area of alteration is not character-defining element, it will not impact a character-defining element either physically or visually. Notice it says it's limited to interior alteration or remodeling and ordinary repair and maintenance, not new construction. New
I
construction.
suppose that's a difference of opinion on how you define
Well, new construction
but
is
if the
listed
council wants to
in
clarify
part,
that.
in part A, one is new construction. Part B1 is just exterior alteration.
Right, so in my hypothetical, expanding out the back is exterior alteration. Perhaps it's new construction, that might be a fight itself,
Well,
depending on the facts of the property.
I think the intent was that would be adding square footage as new construction.
Not exterior alteration. Okay. So then the example is perhaps changing out the windows in the back,
Right.
or taking a window and making it a door, where you're changing the exterior of the property. That's not a character defining element. At present, that would require a full HPC review and approval. Under this ordinance, that would require just a minor work permit.
Okay,
Thus,
so,
direct
so
approval.
on the designations, it's clearly defined as to what's being protected? Is that right? The facade as opposed to the entire building?
Most landmark designations do clearly define the character defining elements. Some do not. Those that do not, this ordinance builds in a procedure to evaluate the existing landmark designation, have it reviewed and approved by a historian, and develop the list of character defining elements if they don't already exist.
Yeah, that was another hole that we had, was if an older landmark resolution didn't do a good job of defining character defining elements. This provides a procedure for fixing that, as well as emphasizing the need to make sure that character defining elements are properly done in new historic landmark designations.
Going forward?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So
Randy?
just quickly, I can understand Mr. Francis' questions regarding this. If you look at just something simply like a lot split, so if I have a piece of landmark, a building on 4 acres, and I think the concern is, so the building's landmarked, yet you're gonna allow me to split the lot and put another dwelling or another structure.
If council approves, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Only
So
if council
that's the
approves,
that's the concern that I'm hearing on that, on a lot split, and that does make sense, or it is a concern, unless it has to have some form of review. And
Well,
then again,
this does.
that's what we're saying that this does.
Right.
Okay, the second thing is, on this whole packet, because you can get glossy-eyed trying to understand this. The fact that the Historic Preservation Commission worked on it prior to the ad hoc committee working on it, and the ad hoc committee working on it and completing it, I think that it's been vetted properly and vetted through the proper channels. So I haven't seen anyone from Historic Preservation actually come up and make any adverse or negative comments about the whole packet. So I'm inclined to make a motion for approval if we're done discussing.
I'll second.
Okay, you have a motion second?
No,
Ryan?
we're not discussing it. I would, if there is a motion, which I'm not even sure now, the one thing I would suggest is I would like to see a sentence added to section 4-8.11 that says these incentives shall only be used when necessary to achieve the goal of historic preservation.
That sounds good.
Great sentence.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, my understanding, yeah, I think that's some good language, but my understanding is that currently, it is a partnership between the property owner and the government to do most of these, where the property owners or the majority of property owners in a district would be petitioning to have some sort of protection of the historic characteristic of the neighborhood. So, from what you were saying, Bill, the idea is that to enumerate some of the ways in which a property owner might be more interested in trying to get the property designated historically.
And request council to consider
Right.
those.
Now, besides
Or
public.
council to take the initiative.
Yeah, besides public buildings, have we ever designated a historic landmark that was privately owned
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
without the property owner's concurrence?
The only property that has been landmarked over the property owner's objections was the Chaparral School.
Right.
Right, publicly owned properties we initiate, but the others generally have to be a partnership between the property owner and that says, what's in it for me? Am I just tying my hands to use my property if I get the tax break? And then tax break is one incentive. These are other incentives. But not necessarily guaranteed to anybody unless we think what they're doing you know, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Said, the language you added to that is helpful to.
Yes.
I don't know if that's.
I just think it clarifies. I think Bill makes a great point. I appreciate where Mr. Francis is coming from. This does have the taste of being a entitlement, or that these are mandatory, or, you know, and it clearly uses may, but it is a little confusing. But I think some language that says, hey, these incentives aren't necessary in every
I
situation,
would
and they're
suggest
only
to make
there
it
if
a
it's.
motion, accept the new sentence.
Right, I accept that sentence.
Very good.
At the discretion of the council, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that still would not change any of that. It's just that it makes it clear that, it clarifies the code, that these are incentives that are not entitlements or necessary. They're simply there for the absolute need. And I could imagine a situation where, let's say you have a small building that's historic and it's landmarked, and they need to change it for parking, and there's the parking rules are one way. We would be able to say, okay, we're going to waive the parking requirements for the situation to ensure it stays a landmark and can function as a landmark in the future. That would be, you know, kind of an example of where they would be enacted.
Okay. And Mr. Francis, would you like to? Does that address your concerns, or is there something we're missing?
Well, the one big thing it's missing is I asked a question that has not been answered by any of you, unless I missed it, which is, if the community development director makes a decision about what qualifies as a minor work permit and whether to give them that or not, an applicant that permit, is that going to be publicly noticed, or is this just going to be a process that's just in the dark and nobody knows what's going on? Because, you know,
But your
My other
request
concern-
is that we would do something like that. Is that correct?
yeah, in other words, the public should know that it's happening.
Right,
You know,
okay.
and that way they can go, oh, okay, that sounds like a minor work permit. Okay, great. You know, like, let's be
Okay.
transparent. Let's not just have this thing that quietly happens, no one knows what's going on, then all of a sudden we look one day and it's like, whoa, the back of this building just went away. What happened?
Right. But
May I
let me just rephrase what's being said out there, and then we'll take it back here. I think what I just heard you say is that you are concerned that it may not. So it's a question: is that would we consider, or is that part of the process to make it transparent? Is that right?
And I would make a suggestion along those lines.
Okay.
Okay.
Bill.
And on page 3-18, attachment A, page 14 or 21, at the top there is B1, where the community development director shall be the review authority, which I believe is the issue you were referring to. And then it says the community development director may refer any application to the HPC. Any decision by the community developer may be appealed to the Historic Preservation Commission. I would think if we add a sentence, say that any minor work permit being reviewed by the community development director shall be publicly noted and communicated to the Historic Preservation Commission prior to issuing the permit.
Well, the public needs some time to respond, right?
There's
So-
10 days
What page are you on?
on page, attachment A, 14 of 21, part B. There's
What's the
always
rush?
There's a
What's the
10-day.
rush?
The rush is someone has a property and they need to fix it. And there needs to be a time-certain procedure for them to say, all right, I need to work on this property to fix it. And the community development director, if they're communicating, if they make it a public notification and they notify the Historic Preservation Commission, then they, first of all, that's even before the permit is issued, and then after the permit's issued, there's a 10-day appeal period.
Okay, so,
If you don't have a procedure defining a
So-
time period,
Yeah.
then you can have an indefinite,
okay.
nothing happen.
But what's wrong with just giving a little more time, like 21 days or something like that? I mean, 10 days is really short. It doesn't seem like the norm that I hear for time periods for public comment, you know? 10 days is, I don't hear that very often.
Well, I have no problem putting a longer time frame on it. I just point out the issue is if a minor work permit is meant to be responsive to a property owner's needs while still protecting the public interest. I think the city manager wants to say something.
Steve?
I'm very sensitive to all the concerns that are being stated here. I just wanted to throw out another suggestion here. Because at some point, the community development director is going to need to make a decision on that. And I think at that point, I would agree that's where, that the public needs to be aware that a decision has been made by the community development director. I would perhaps suggest that, and council may want to give a longer timeline than 10 days if that is a concern, but I would like to recommend that when the decision is made, because until you have a decision, I'm not sure what you can really act on. But when the decision is made, that the director notify the Historic Preservation Commission. We could require that to be done immediately or within that business day. And then we could also require that to be posted. And we could post it here at City Hall. We could post it on the city website. And then if there was a designated time period, 10 days or a longer time period, then there would be notification to the HPC as well to the members of the public to give them an opportunity to appeal.
Well, why don't we say that the community development director will publicly list any intent to issue a minor work permit and notify the Historic Preservation Commission 21 days before a permit is issued.
Could do that too.
Is there an exception for emergencies? I mean, what if you break your back slider door? You got to wait 3 weeks to replace it?
No, that's
A backslider door is a historic feature?
Backslider.
Yeah, well, it is
You're
now.
young. Yeah, you're right, yeah. You think of things I have at my house as
How about a
historic,
middle
yeah.
path of
Again, we were putting a lot of responsibility on the community development director and trusting their discretion here. But I think that it's a valid point that we have public disclosure. And
I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure. I mean, if somebody throws a rock through your window, you got to wait 3 weeks to get a permit to.
No,
Well,
that's
you-
just repair, right?
That's repair.
Well,
That's ordinary, there's ordinary repair.
That sure looks like a work. That sure looks under this
Okay.
definition to be a.
Well,
Even potentially
let me part number
minor.
C, ordinary repair and maintenance on any non-landmark property, and the same property as a landmark, that's a whole different category. Let me see where I'm trying to find. I believe there's an issue where if you are repairing something, I forget exactly where it is, I can't find it, but it's not affecting a
As long as there's
character-defining
some,
element.
as long as that's accounted for, that's all I wanted to make sure.
I agree with you.
So I'm a middle-of-the-road guy, I could see 15 working days.
Well,
That's
I'm-
a 3-week period.
Let's say 15 days.
But more importantly is, I think it being noticed through the HPC is probably more important. The fact, because that's a public notice, and that a lot of people go online to see what the HPC is doing, what's on their agenda. And if that's noticed there, that this permit has gone through.
Or it's being proposed.
I
Yeah.
think that is a lot more information than what you're saying
It's
right now.
transparent.
So I think a 15-day proposal notification period to the HPC.
15 working days?
15 working days. Let's do working days.
Right, same thing, okay, good. Okay, we have a
Well,
deal.
someone will count,
Working days or
some
calendar
people
days?
count Saturdays and Sundays, that's fine.
Let's call working.
I'm trying to say, so,
All right, let's go with that.
Court days.
Okay, and then I just wanted to bring up one other point, which is, maybe the city attorney can speak to this, I don't know, but I don't understand why you need to have all that language in there saying may. You may. You know you may, okay? That's why you're elected as a council. That's just, I'm not used to seeing in ordinances this long list of things that you may. If it doesn't say that you can't, then obviously you can. So why is that there?
And what is the concern, since if it's there and the power exists, letting people know that if they might consider having their property
You
historically.
want to let people that have historic properties, let them know that they might want to think about a lot split?
If it
Why
serves
would we-
historic
why would we want-
preservation, yes. Yes, if it serves historic preservation
Oh,
goals,
okay.
yes.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
you and I need to agree to disagree on this particular
Okay.
point. Suggesting lot splits does not further historic preservation, in my opinion.
Well, members of the Historic Preservation Commission disagree.
Okay.
Well, I imagine there are examples where that would be what would be the sweetener to have them go under, what is the contract that you get when?
Yeah.
No, not the Mills Act, what's the other? The other
Maintenance Act?
maintenance
I
contract.
made my suggestions.
Yeah, right.
I'm not making the decision, so.
Yeah,
thank you.
okay, no, I'm just, we're having a conversation and
Yeah.
we
And I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation. This is a lot easier to try to make my point, it's much easier to do it in a dialogue as opposed to I get one shot to say something. and then someone on the council gets to say a bunch of stuff, I don't get a chance to respond, so I appreciate the opportunity to respond. Thank you.
And you didn't have to run for council to do it. It's good. Yeah.
And we did notice, the ad hoc meetings.
Yeah.
I wanted to
I
make
got to
one.
reconsider this whole thing. I think we're onto something.
I also want to make, we did notice the ad hoc meetings for anyone that wanted to come.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So
And Tom, you got to clear up your answering machine. I tried to call you twice.
All right, so we have
Okay.
a motion,
We have an amended motion.
an
Okay.
amended motion. Do we have all the, does someone want to read back the amendments? Can we?
Are we,
Is my sentence the only amendment, or is there no?
I'm happy to read back what I understand is the motion.
Okay.
It's to introduce the ordinance as proposed with the following changes in order. In section 4803, add a requirement that no quorum shall constitute a majority of non-city residents, leaving the quorum requirement at 4. In section 4811, add a new sentence below the 7-item list in subsection C. These incentives shall only be used, or perhaps approved by the council, shall only be approved by the council when necessary to achieve the goals of historic preservation.
That's fine, Matt. Okay.
And
I have moved.
in section, I think that actually made it, no.
It's 4.8, 4-8.16B1.
Add that at least 15 business days before approving a proposed minor work permit, the community development director shall notify the Historic Preservation Commission and the public via the city's website and the HPC, the next HPC agenda of the permit intended to be approved.
Great.
Something along those lines.
okay, are those 3 changes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, let's do them one at a piece. You know, let's divide the question so that,
And the last one, as noted by the member of the public, was, there was discussion, but I didn't hear consensus on the council about the idea of changing the vote threshold for a historic district.
I'm fine with it. Oh, no, I'm not fine with that.
Yeah, I want to do with what Commissioner Conroy.
okay, we need to get, let's see, let's have a motion regarding the quorum and take care of that. Then we'll go just work right through, okay?
Move to approve that.
Okay, move, second? Okay, it's moved and second. Any discussion on the issue of the quorum?
The issue of the quorum is that if it's reduced, if the number of commissioners are reduced from 7 to
No,
5?
it's not, no.
Nothing to do with it,
The
regardless.
sentence says
Okay.
that a quorum
Just wanna
can't be
make sure.
made up of a majority of people who don't live in the city.
Right.
Okay? And that seems very reasonable. I think we're pretty
Right.
generous.
That's it.
Okay,
That's it.
okay. If there's no objection, that'll pass.
That's my first amendment.
Okay,
Second?
okay, now, do you have another one?
No, the second one was,
Okay, the second one,
That was the first one. The second one
the one Ryan made?
The sentence.
was the added sentence to section 4811 regarding the incentives, that the incentives can only be used, can only be approved by the council,
Shall only be used.
shall only be used, shall only be approved by the
Shall.
council
There you go.
when necessary to achieve the goals of historic preservation.
Yes.
Correct.
And that'd be a new sentence added below the list of, the current list of 7 incentive types.
I move approval of that amendment.
Second.
Second. Okay,
I'll accept that amendment.
I'll accept
You
it.
don't need to, we're gonna vote on it. Okay, that's a yes? Okay, if there's any objection to that?
Amendment. is my-
Okay,
is
then
my-
that has this sort of straw polls, I guess, here. Okay, well, yeah, it's agreed, okay.
Building blocks.
Yeah.
Okay, I would make a motion that if we're going to have that language, I like Ryan's approach to it, but I would agree with Mr. Francis that I'm not sure why we would want to include the suggestion of an inducement to divide properties in order to have historic, if we can do that anyway, because there will be circumstances where we might want to do it, but why would we want to encourage that particularly?
I could give an example.
Well, okay,
but
first of all, maybe there's no second, is there a second
Well,
to that
I
motion?
need to understand it.
No, I think it's a tool, and we've clarified it has to be for a specific purpose and open to council approval.
I
So,
understand that's the argument in favor, saying it doesn't do any harm, and the argument the other way is that how much good does it do? People don't generally start out with looking at ordinances to see what benefits there are. We don't put that in many things, so I'm just wondering, as an old developer, that would be an inducement to me to think, I can buy this as one, pay one price for it, and turn it into two, and I make money, yeah.
Okay, I'll second your motion.
Well, again, the idea is to have tools for the Historic Preservation Commission to use.
Right, okay, but I think we could offer those in other ways, so, okay, yeah, is there further discussion? If not, okay, apparently we need a vote on this one, I don't think.
Well, I just want to say that if we are eliminating the entire section, the sentence we just approved probably doesn't need to be.
Right, I think the sentence is
So
meant
it's
to.
just sitting there with no incentives
The,
listed.
the sentence was meant to be part and parcel of the list.
That may very well persuade 3 votes in favor of keeping it.
Okay,
So,
so we'll vote on it.
I'm sorry, but just for a point of order, I made a motion, correct? And my motion was seconded. And now we have 3 amendments to my motion, am I correct?
No, what I had requested was dividing the questions so that we wouldn't have to vote up or down on a whole bunch of stuff. We just take a piece at a time, using your motion and the other motions, and by dividing it up. If you don't want to do it that way, then we'll have to, we can formally take a vote on whether we want to divide the question. It just gives everybody more choice.
Well, let's go.
Does it-
I like dividing.
you
All
know,
right,
the
so we're,
questions.
so we're on the
end up in
third.
the same place.
I just wanted to understand the process here, the
Maybe
procedure.
we should just,
That's a good point you made,
Okay.
Andy.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
So we're on the third amendment.
This is whether we eliminate the section.
Well, you know, these are, yeah. Okay, so I don't think there's any more, we might as well go ahead and, call the roll on that,
Yeah.
right? Because I think that there's gonna be a split on it, or maybe not.
Mr. Mayor, for clarity's sake, is the present straw motion to delete all 7 listed incentives or merely to delete lot split?
Well, that's a good question.
I wasn't sure
I
what you
thought it
were
was just
discussing.
The lot split one was the one that was brought up, and the one that pinged me. I don't know if the others are, well, rather than go through and laboriously, I think that I'm on the losing end of this, but my feeling is that we don't necessarily need to put it into the law, because there is kind of an implication. It's not an entitlement, but it's something that people will be asking, and maybe that's great, so why don't we
So
just.
your motion is to eliminate all of them.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And if it's gonna pass, I'm glad to have your language in there.
So this would be a no, would keep it.
What?
Right.
If it
Wait a
doesn't
minute.
pass, we keep
That's
it.
right.
What?
If it doesn't pass, we keep it with Ryan's language.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
No.
Councilmember Blatz,
No.
Councilmember Haney,
No.
Councilmember Wyrick.
No.
Sorry to have taken your time. Okay.
I was fine with the lot split, but I can't do all the,
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, the next one, Mr. City Attorney, was,
On that, so the next one on that same page would be the vote threshold for the proposed historic districts, which shows up in section 4809.
The vote procedure. Yeah.
Right, whether it is set at 1 vote, 1 parcel, or 1 vote, 1 owner.
And my feeling about that, if I may?
sure,
Is to leave it the way it is for this reason. I think there's as much mischief over defining it as number of owners as there is 1 vote per parcel. There is no single way to do this that would be fair or considered to be fair under all circumstances. And that's, for that reason, I think the most obvious and clear is 1 vote per parcel. I can see if it's all owners of being just as subject to gaming the system as would be owning parcels. And I would be in favor of just leaving it as it is.
I have a question.
yeah,
Is this the same language as what the code originally stated?
No, the current municipal code provides the threshold is 1 vote per owner, 51%, that is, and 50% plus 1 rather, 1 vote per owner, not 1 vote per parcel. So it would be a change from the current code.
And I thought the historic commissioners recommended changing the language back to what the code originally
No.
stated.
It's a,
Well,
I
It
think
didn't
there's
happen.
more than one opinion from the commission.
yes.
I see.
I guess my reaction would be, well, I agree with you, Bill, that there is mischief both ways. It seems that there's more likely to be mischief in somebody buying up an area and then outvoting the people who live there than the other way around. So I would be inclined to stay with what the code says of, you know, the one owner. But is that one owner per parcel or one owner per,
The present
In
code
the
language
district.
counts up all the owners in the district. Each owner gets equal vote regardless of how,
how many parcels, right?
or pieces of parcel. It's just structured, if you're a person on title, you get a vote. Or an entity on title, you get a vote.
On title of every parcel or only,
All the parcels that are proposed in the district.
so you might, if you have 9 and there are only 10 in the district, you've got controlling interest? If you've got,
No, you have one vote.
No, you'd have, if
that's
there
what,
were,
that's what I'm trying to
if
clarify.
there are 9 parcels in a, if there's a 10 parcel district, as an example, and there are 2 owners, one owner owns one parcel, 3 owners, one owner owns one parcel, another owner owns another parcel, and the last owner owns the other 8, then if it was one vote per parcel, the 8 owner would control, because they'd have 8 votes over the other 2. If it's one vote per owner, as is the current code, then it's
Okay,
3
that's-
votes, and each person votes. And the
Except
8
that what if there are multiple owners?
then the current system did not divide the vote by, didn't percentage it up. Every person got a vote. So we did have, the classic example, of course,
You
a husband and
Joint
wife,
tenants, there were 2 different votes.
Okay.
a husband and wife would get 2 votes.
See, I've always,
So
That's the
some
current
properties
system.
get 1 vote and some get 2.
yeah, see, Mayor, I've always struggled with that. I don't know how,
Doesn't make any sense. It's
a
never
single
been easy.
entity on title gets 1 vote.
It's never been
And a
easy.
husband and wife get 2 vote, and they're on 1 parcel. I've
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
well, that's what
understood
Bill's
that.
saying, right?
That- It
Ask
just
Kathleen
makes
how she counted
no
it.
sense
Listen
to
to
me.
Kathleen Muller, she
And so
counted it.
the,
Be 1 to
so,
1.
so the solution to it is to do what?
Well, again, I expressed myself. I thought
Go ahead.
the
It's
clearest approach is one vote per parcel, just because I can't think of any other system has its own potential for mischief.
Right.
Yeah. And the negativity in that is just that if there's joint tenants, if they didn't agree, they would not have a vote.
And the city would, it's a written majority protest process. So if joint tenants at 50-50 ownership, they couldn't agree, they just simply wouldn't submit their protest.
Well, it could be
It's
3
not-
owners, it could be 5 owners, a deed can have as many owners as it wants, so that's the
Right,
only.
but yeah,
Point of order. I just have an idea that I just want to throw out there because I haven't heard it, and
That's
it might
not a
help.
point of order.
Okay.
For the,
Okay, just a second, okay. We don't have any great ideas ourselves, but let's,
So, the question, what was the question? The question was joint tenants. So if it's 1 vote per parcel, all of the owners of the parcel have to sort it out among themselves,
Yeah.
whether they wish to submit their protest card or not.
I agree with Bill. Let's
It's up
just-
to them.
we
If
vote?
it's.
I agree with 1 per parcel. Can we vote on it? I mean, have we not beat this thing to death yet?
no,
Up
not
to the
yet.
council.
Yeah, we're very good at beating things to death. Yeah, Tom, you said you heard something, nice and short.
Okay, very simple. It would be 1 vote per parcel, but a maximum of 1 vote per person.
Yeah,
It does both.
It doesn't do both.
One vote.
I'm looking at the city attorney.
I'm not
do-
sure if I
you
fully
still can only
understand that
vote once per
proposal.
One vote.
It would
If you own
give,
5 parcels, you only get 1 vote.
that's the same thing as saying 1 vote per parcel.
no.
No, 1 vote at all.
If one person owned 5 parcels, Mr. Francis's suggestion is that you would have 1 vote.
How many
Okay.
times has the city of Ojai had to count votes for a historic district?
Once.
How long do we want to spend doing this? Are we waiting for the next one to come in front of us? Because this is ridiculous. Like this is so rare. It is not a common thing, and the voting on it is very simple. That part of it should be pretty simple. We've looked at it 3 different ways. The 1 vote per parcel makes sense. Can we?
Right, and your last client, I think,
No, it was
agreed
different
with
than
that.
that, and they didn't. And that's
They
different.
own-
That's
they-
why I think this clears it up.
Ryan, welcome to Ojai City Council.
Yeah.
Let's vote.
Okay, your motion was?
1 vote per parcel.
Okay, we have a motion, it was
I'd
seconded by?
second it, yes, I'd
Okay, yeah,
second
right, we've got 2 seconds to it, good.
Go
Okay.
around the ring.
Okay, I don't have
Councilmember
a better
Wyrick?
answer for it.
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
No.
Mayor Johnston?
No. Okay, passed. What else we got left?
The notification.
The last change was to section 4816, subsection B, to add a sentence that would read, at least 15 business days before approving a proposed minor work permit, the Community Development Director shall notify the Historic Preservation Commission and the public via the city's website and the next HPC agenda of the permit intended to be approved.
Okay, now that was what first it was
Okay, that-
21, and somebody
And I
suggested
obviously,
15.
I heard 15, I heard 21.
15 is good, but we'd have to make clear that there's time for another HPC meeting. So it would have to be 15 days or the next HPC meeting.
Right, either or, right.
Oh.
How long could that be? That could be
It
65.
could be more than 15
Oh, it
days
could
for the
be,
next
yeah.
HPC meeting.
If you'll permit me a question, I understood this to be a requirement that the Community Development Director notify the HPC that it's proposed to be approved,
So he would call
not
the
that he
meeting.
put it on their agenda.
You
That's
s-
two
you-
different things.
You used the word agenda.
No, I said the word, it would be notified on the agenda, which would mean the agenda would have a statement or a list of proposed permits included in it, but it wouldn't be on the agenda.
Right, it's not an agendized
Okay.
item.
The agenda
It's
is
just
two
a
doc,
notice.
thank you.
Okay, I'm
It's a
good, I'm sorry.
notice.
I'm sorry.
It would be included in the notice, but not
But
made
they
an
would,
item.
they would
Right.
notice the commission, and if they wanted to take action, they could.
Right, if the commission wished to appeal it, they could add it to their
All
agenda and
right, I
appeal
got
it.
it. Or call a special meeting if they
Or
want.
call a special meeting.
Okay, and this would require that the Community Development Director, as soon as he got this posted, so there'd be a 2-week opportunity for the public and for the Historic Commission to weigh in on it,
Yes,
okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Let's vote.
it's a good one.
Wait, I would like to hear from the Historic Commission on, about how this could work.
Brian, you look like you're having,
Having been involved in this for 4 years.
Why don't you go over-
countless numbers of meetings.
come on
Oh,
up.
go.
Having been involved in this for 4 years in countless numbers of meetings, I've heard 3 times from someone who didn't show up at any of the meetings we've talked about. So now we're talking about notifying the HPC, the Community Development Director, if there's something, we're going to notify that person, the HPC, within 10 or 15 days.
15.
No, immediately notify.
Immediately notify.
Everybody gets notified, public and the commission if they want to, so everybody knows about it.
Okay, so it's going to go to all of our commission members?
Yes.
Because I was hearing it was going to go to the
No.
HPC, and since I'm the HPC, I was wondering what I needed to do before I got roasted.
Well,
No, it was gonna, it's a notification.
It's a
Okay, so-
notification to the world of which you happen to be the experts, or at least the ones who devote your time to it, and you have 15 days to appeal it if you think there's something
Or-
wrong.
Yeah.
How do I do that since I can't talk to the rest of everybody else?
You don't, it's not an act, you as an individual
I'm sorry.
commissioner.
Any-
You as an individual commissioner, if you thought there's something wrong.
Oh, okay, so,
You just call the public order, you know, and
so us
file.
individually would go to the Community
I assume
Development
that would be
Director?
what
Right.
the appeal, and then that would.
I have
trigger-
no idea. I'm sorry, I'm not
I
trained.
think
No,
that's,
we don't either, we're making
Don't want
sausage
to get
here.
roasted, you know?
No, yes.
Seal off the entrance to our track.
City
I would,
manager.
I would,
Minor work
to
permit
confirm
issue
that,
for
that would
this.
be our understanding. If any member of the commission objected to it or requested,
Okay. Or
or
any member of
requested
the
it to be on the
public,
agenda, it would be same, thank you, Mr. Mayor, right.
Now, do we have an appeal procedure?
Yes, this ordinance has an appeal
Okay.
procedure. It's a-
Okay, so
This-
everybody gets an opportunity, if they are concerned, they at least they know what it is that's being done or proposed to be done?
Right.
Perfect.
The win, Brian, the win is, Mr. Francis was talking about the public. Now HPC Commission is actually being notified too. Notice where you weren't gonna be in the past. So win, win, win. for
So
all.
I appreciate that very much, Councilman Haney, because as soon as a construction project starts on something that everybody thinks is historic, they call me. And I'm like, and so
We appreciate
I
that.
call my good friend Sherry, who's on the counter, who then tells me, "Oh, they're not doing anything," or she'll let me know, and then I call all the people who are like, "How come you haven't stopped this already?" So yeah, anything to get me more information. I just don't
That's it.
want to be roasted.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Move in the city and run for council, join the club.
I know.
That's what happens. We all get called, yeah, right, same thing. I understand your agony.
I'm in a lot of different events, but I congratulate the 5 of you for your diligence, for doing what you do. I appreciate it. You make the city of Ojai stronger, which makes, to me, the Ojai Valley stronger, and I have congratulated you many times for your,
Okay.
for your support of the HPC.
And your time's up. Thanks, Brian. Right, okay.
Let's vote.
Okay,
What have we voted? What have we voted?
which is,
I,
oh, this is on the notice, right?
yes.
Yeah,
That's-
okay, yeah.
what
Well, is there
is
any
it?
objection to it
No.
then?
So
If
the
not,
notice
then
is.
we'll
it's a-
just
it's a-
all vote
it's a-
on the whole thing
It's
then.
just to be clear, it's a 15-day notice. The 15 days are 15 business days or 15 days?
Business days.
Business days.
So it's 3 weeks.
Business days.
Well,
Okay.
it would
3 or
depend
more
on when
weeks
it
if there's
fell.
holidays.
Yeah.
15 business days.
You know, weekends and any holidays would be
Holidays.
added
At
in
least,
there.
at least you guys didn't make it court days. That's
Okay.
even harder.
15 business days.
Okay. If there's no objection to that, now we have, Randy, is that your motion?
That's the motion.
Good job,
Your
Randy.
omnibus motion, okay, and we got a
Omnibus.
second?
I re-second it.
Okay.
Got a second. Let's
Okay,
vote.
now, so everybody knows what we're talking about. Okay, call the roll.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Okay, and now this is what, the first
First reading.
so
And I want
anybody
to,
out there at home wants to weigh in the next meeting, come on down.
Mayor Johnston, could I just congratulate the committee? Elise did yeoman's work, holding us all together with details, Brian's work. Everybody on that commission did a whole lot of volunteer effort towards this, and
Absolutely. Great
congratulations.
job.
Yeah, Craig Walker.
Great job.
Yeah.
And if you'll permit me also, thanks to some of the original committee members, Rose Boggs, and Terry Hill.
Yes.
Good. Good effort. Great effort.
Okay, that's, we're all on tape, so I guess the lawyers and everybody weigh in as to the interpretation. I guess we've made it as clear as we can.
All right, let's get on to alcohol.
Yeah, let's go out. Yeah, we need a drink.
Mr. Mayor?
City managers.
Oh,
I will be
okay.
recusing myself on this due to
Okay.
a financial incentive. Thank you.
Just wanted to give the council member a chance to finish. Could ask if we could just have a short break for technical purposes. We just need to set up for this next item here.
Please. I'd love a
Gotta set
short
up.
break.
We just need a few minutes, so if we could take a short recess, thank you.
What are we gonna do?
Short break. That's the
Oh, is this-
happiest moment of the evening.
Back into session. Ryan, come on back down. The misery's not over yet. Oh, no, yeah,
He's
pardon me,
recused.
pardon me, Ryan.
He's recused.
You got a pass.
This was the last one going home.
Okay, you made, yeah, you're excused, thank you. Okay, we got everybody that is aboard, yeah, okay. This is the issue on, okay, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to note that we do have our Community Development Director, Luke Connolly, is available on phone if we do need to, if we have questions or we need to reach him. So he is here. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. So again, this item is back for council. Council had had the discussion previously and had sent it to the Planning Commission. We do have a recommendation back from Planning Commission on this issue. It does differ from staff's recommendation. First, I will note that the Planning Commission recommend approving a zoning text amendment that would allow the sale of beer and wine only for legally existing transient occupancy uses in the M1 zone, and that would also be, would need to be approved through a conditional use permit. So again, allow beer and wine sales, but it would only apply to the transient uses that are currently permitted in the M1 zone. Staff's recommendation is different than that. We're recommending that the council rather approve a zoning text amendment that would go much broader than that, and it would allow sale of alcohol, on-site sale, and would also permit hotels and motels and similar short-term uses, again, through the approval of a CUP in the M1 zoning district. So again, the real difference there is the Plan Commission's recommendation narrows it down to just the existing facilities. Staff's recommendation, which we think might be a little bit more, I think addresses some of the concerns that council had raised in terms of trying to address these uses in the zone. And we also felt that the Planning Commission recommendation was perhaps could be subject to challenge as perhaps being a little too narrow. So as a result, staff is recommending, again, allowing this use in the M1 zone with the CUP. And again, it would allow for both on-site sale of alcohol, would also allow for the hotels, motels, and similar uses. I believe that this would address the concerns that have been raised by the caravan outpost operators. If this was approved by council, they would then be able to come forward to the city and seek approval to sell beer and wine through a CUP. Happy to answer any questions, and again, Mr. Connolly is here on the line as well.
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay, yeah, do I have any cards on this?
Just got one.
Yeah, I have a staff question.
Okay, go ahead.
Looking at the map, page, attachment A, page 1 of 1, zoning codes for the city of Ojai, is the, it's hard to read, old people, but the parcels, the north boundary of parcels 17106, 17301, and 17205, all prefaced by 0230, is that north boundary the Valley Bike Trail?
What was the last part of your question?
I'm just wondering whether that's the Valley Bike Trail,
Oh,
the north
Valley Bike
boundary of the parcels beginning with 0230 that have numbers 13108, I think, and 17301 and 17205. Whether that north boundary going across there under the pink, joining up with the bottom of the pink on the other side, is that the Valley Bike
It says
Trail?
Ojai Valley Trail, yeah.
I think that's the Ojai Valley Bike Trail.
Right, it even says it.
so.
It does say that somewhere?
Yeah. Oh,
It's
it
pretty
says-
neat, so don't take it personally then.
I didn't see that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I missed that.
It's
It ends at the
really
end.
faint print there
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
on the edge of the
Yeah.
pink.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, the edge of the pink?
Yep,
I take your word for it.
There.
It's kind of faint.
Oh, my goodness, that is faint.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
I missed it entirely. Sorry. Thank you. I actually had my ink over it, so I didn't even see it. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
No, I just
Are
wanted that
we-
clarification.
Oh, did you get your question
Yeah,
answered?
my question's
Okay.
answered.
Okay, my recollection is that we already debated this, and that what we, that the conclusion, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we wanted to limit it strictly to the, to allowing for the sale of alcohol to the clients of the existing hotel.
No, well, yes, sort of.
Sort of.
There was a difference of opinion. I think you and I shared the one that we were wanting it to be narrowly crafted, but
narrow.
not for a specific property, only those properties that happen to fall into the category
yes.
which was to be created.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
I have
first
one-
option.
Yeah.
I have one public comment card here. Should we take the?
Yeah.
This isn't a hearing tonight, is it? No.
No.
Okay. Elise, come on up.
It's not a hearing?
No, but you're welcome to, yeah.
Elise
I didn't have
DuPont.
to open a hearing.
Elise DuPont, Ojai. I don't think it's fair to the caravan people that they simply want to sell some wine at their property. Why does it have to be tied up with this big land use change idea? It's not fair to them. Just give them a CPU let them sell their wine and then deal with the land use changes later. I don't understand why you keep making him come back for this. And I don't see why it came up in the first place, but I guess it's an idea that staff thinks it's a good idea, but I confess I didn't read the whole thing, but there was a sentence on there. There is a likelihood that traditional manufacturing uses will continue to decline in the future, and I don't know if there was a study done to project that kind of statement. I mean, this is a small town, would be taking away a big segment of this area that can hold this light manufacturing. I think it's something that needs to be seriously considered and think about converting more to the hospitality industry in this city. So I think you should pass the CUP for them to have alcohol and deal with this later. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elise. That was the only card I have on that, so the council will now have discussion. I'm going along with Susan and to some degree with the comment we just heard. I don't think that there's any entitlement or that it's necessarily unfair, but just as a practical matter, this city did allow a particular kind of use where it is fairly commonplace for that use to have that kind of service available, and we're trying to work around all the legal machinations to make it legitimate, but I don't think we need to change the zone outside of the general plan. I don't see why I recognize that if you say the existing, well, there's only one existing, so I don't think that should be in there. But it seems to me that any legally, how do you have this here? You say for legally transient occupancy uses, there might be that one, and however they got their permit, maybe that somebody else would get one later, and if they don't, so what? But we could take it up during the general plan if we want to go further.
So I'll
can
go
we
ahead
do that?
and take your suggestion and make a motion to take the option one, approve the planning commission recommendation showed in attachment C, which would allow the on-site sale of beer and wine for legal transit occupancy uses in the M1 zoning district through the approval of a CUP.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion.
Well, I think what staff was trying to achieve is Councilman Wyrick had asked about an overlay.
Right, and I think it's just more scope than we want to get
And I think that's what they
into.
tried addressing, so
Yeah.
I'm not condemning staff for making a recommendation.
Okay.
Hope not.
And I do agree with the fact that until we reevaluate the community as a whole and really look at the MPD and the M1, and if we're gonna make a change, that would be the time to do it, is in the planning discussions. I agree, not with it right now. And it was also my proposal to actually make this simple and to make it address just to the caravan outpost
Okay, but I
concerns.
don't.
No, we don't want to
that's-
talk like that.
yeah,
That's
no,
done.
you
Well, I'm
can't
just talking
do
about
that.
to the existing TOT.
That's why we just say legal transit.
Right, to the existing TOT.
Legal transit.
Yeah.
I just had one question, though. I'm still at a loss, maybe it's, again, the wrong time to do it, but I kept looking up RV campground. Can someone tell me where the heck RV campground is in our?
There. It's not there,
Doesn't
It is
exist.
not in the land use table.
not there.
Thank you for, I wish I'd known that earlier. I spent days on that looking for it.
Not there.
And that was the issue also, that the alcohol sales are not permitted in the zone. So that's the issue that we're trying to solve here as well.
Okay, so that again is something that we're gonna have to look at when we get to the
Right.
planning.
But can't we, with a text amendment?
Correct.
Yeah.
Make it permissible for those that are legally operating?
Absolutely.
Right.
My only point is
However they got there.
we wouldn't be able to issue a CUP today without this text amendment.
Right.
But that will solve the issue.
Right,
So,
Let's vote.
let's vote.
okay, roll call?
Wait, did someone make a motion? That was
I
Bill's
did.
motion? Who
Yeah, Bill
seconded it?
did.
Souza seconded, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
Yes.
Mayor Johnston.
Yes. Okay.
So just so nobody thinks that we're torturing the process or delaying it out or anything
He's
like
out in the
that.
hallway, man.
By code, we need to bring this now back to the planning commission, and then planning commission will bring a recommendation back to the city council.
Wait, the planning commission recommended this.
The reason is
We've
that
amended it, yeah. so-
the
but-
reason for that is that the discussion here tonight and the discussion at the planning commission previously were not noticed public hearings because the council hadn't so directed. It was brought forward as a move it fast as possible. State law requires notice public hearings to do zoning code amendments. We didn't have direction to do so.
But you
So it
couldn't,
was recommendation and then recommendation, and now we have direction as to the policy choice. With that policy choice direction, then we can bring it forward in the
we
final
understand.
hearing set.
And is that by law that it has to go back? Or just, is
It's
it?
by law that a zoning code amendment has to have a public hearing at the planning commission, followed by a public hearing at the city council.
are you saying that
It
if
was
we had?
noticed at the planning commission. You're just saying it wasn't designated a hearing,
No, it wasn't noticed.
even though people
The
took,
notice wasn't mailed notice wasn't provided to property
to
owners
all the
within 300
property
feet.
owners.
Oh, the
That
property
piece is
owner for
required.
alcohol. Yeah, I get those because I live near town.
Okay.
So I get these
Right.
notices.
Well, you now
yeah.
have the direction.
Yes,
so
we do.
you could post haste, go ahead and do
Yep,
it. yeah.
we will.
Okay.
We will move it forward as fast as we can.
Okay,
Thank
great,
you.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
And with that, are we done with Luke?
Not that one,
Can
next
Luke go to bed?
yeah, Luke can go to bed.
Bye, Luke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Connolly. We're done with
Bye,
you.
Luke.
Okay, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is mid-year budget review. This appears to be going, but in my view, the review is just simply how are we doing in terms of revenue and expenditures, not reopening things to budgetaries. I've had people call me acting like, well, they didn't know we were going to do this. They'd like to spend some of the money too. And I think, no, we're not doing that.
So this is really more of to check mid-year to see if we need to make any major course corrections to the budget. I'd be
That
happy
would-
to get, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
And that's what the top part's saying, the recommendations for things that have been forced upon us.
Correct.
That's different than the things that are saying optional.
Correct,
Yeah.
right. The items that we have recommended are basically bills that the city has already had to incur. Of course, they were done as a result of council direction. We just need to get them into the budget now, appropriate them to the correct location. Again, that's why why the council had the wisdom to set aside a contingency budget so that we could address these things that come up every year, that we know that come up every year, to be able to have the funds to address those. So, again, I can give you a very quick rundown on the budget. I will do the very quick and dirty version here, and happy to go as far in detail as council would like. The bottom line is we don't need to make any major course corrections right now. The adopted budget, which was adopted back prior to July 1st, we're not saying that you need to make any significant changes in terms of the, other than the minor recommendations that we have here under the expenditures. We don't have any significant changes in terms of, well, let me back up here. If you take a look at where we're at in terms of our overall revenues, we're projecting between our projected revenues, our pretended expenditures, we're now saying that we expect to finish the year $37,000 to the black. So in our adopted budget, we had zero of a balanced budget, so now we're projecting that we're going to be 37,000 to the ahead. That's just a projection. That's not anything that we can count at this time.
Yeah, so at this time of the year and this level.
Right.
We're following the budget, we're living within our means.
Exactly.
It doesn't require any.
Right.
Yeah.
We did better than expected on our tax revenues, particularly in property tax and sales tax. We're still seeing some lag on the transient occupancy tax, likely a result of the Thomas Fire and some of the
And Oaks,
impacts
the Oaks
from
Hotel,
that, right?
Isn't it? I don't think the other.
Yeah, the Oaks is still
last
not
year.
back open, and that is definitely a hit on the TOT. That was the good news. It got canceled out by, we had significantly less than expected volume coming across the permit counter for planning and building, so those fees are down considerably. So if you take that and the better than average showing that we saw in the tax revenues, our revenues are pretty much, now at a wash for the rest of the year. So
You meant better than average sales tax revenue?
we did better than average sales tax, better than average property tax.
Okay.
But we're down a little bit in transient occupancy tax, strangely down a little bit in our franchise fees as well. But again, that positive was
Yeah, but we determined that
taken out by the
some of that
negative of
problem was
the-
an administrative lag in the budget committee.
Timing, isn't it?
right.
The timing issue.
Correct, right. Some of the, yeah, right. So again, the long and the short of it is, we think our revenues are on track with what we had adopted in the budget. We do have the recommended changes here for, to be added to the expenditures, which is the $30,000 that has been spent by the attorney contesting the, or working through the issues related to the California Voting Rights Act. And we do have a pending payment to the attorney that brought that action against the city. That's a $30,000 budget item. And then the city attorney fees for that is totaling up to $18,000, so we need to make an appropriation for that. And then we also had some appeal costs related to the Bentley Oil of $7,000. So those are the items that were recommended to be added in. We can take those out of the contingency. It currently has $82,000 available in it for unforeseen expenses. Funding the recommended items would reduce that down to $27,000. So that would what we would have for the remainder of the year in the contingency fund. So we would want to try to, I think, hold on to that.
This isn't money, these are appropriations, these are what we hope happens. So it looks like everything's balancing, and with a little luck, we'll get through without going in the red.
Right.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we do not expect to go in the red. We hope we can finish a little bit to the black, but we'd be happy if we could finish balanced.
So I presume at some future meeting, we'll have an appropriation adjustment between accounts to cover the things we didn't realize were coming in the case of the lawsuits and that were imposed upon us.
Yeah, we'd actually be asking for that action tonight to add those into the budget. And
Well, I don't,
That's the recommended items, the first three bullets on page 404.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Don't those usually come where it's saying adjusting this account to that account?
That, to be clear, that's exactly what we're doing. We're saying we'll take that money out of the budgeted contingency
Right.
and move it into these. We're not asking for new additional appropriations.
Well, we're adjusting appropriations. We're not going outside the adopted budget into the savings account. Okay.
that is correct.
Okay, good. Okay, so you need a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Okay, moved and second. Is any objection? Not much choice on that part. And
Okay.
and let's hope that all the numbers work out, and we'll end the year with something that goes into the reserve.
Yeah, and I think we're quite confident. I think we're in a good position, so.
Okay, Sousa.
Okay, so for council consideration, we had a request from the Art Commission to pull the modification of Libby Park fencing along Trimpin Arch for
Yeah.
$25,000. So can we pull that for future discussion?
Go ahead,
Okay,
sir.
my comment on this was, it said it was a budget review, not a budget hearing, and that's asking for money, and this is not the appropriate time to be doing that.
So we're pulling it.
No, we're not pulling, we're just not dealing with it.
Yeah, I think the mayor's point was that we should tonight keep this to the review of the receive and file and adjustments over which we have no control.
Right, and I mean, this would be, these kinds of things come up during budget hearings, and then everybody knows the public is, a trough is now open, and they all come in
And
and
I
want
think
their
that-
share,
right.
and that's fine, and then we weigh it between all of the other competing expenses. that
I
we
will
have.
say, I think Susan might have been contacted by some of the Arts Commission members, the same I was, and I just want to make it clear that this is not approving the financing for the Libby Park fencing along the arch, and this is not saying that we're not going to do it. It's not talking about the design. Today, there's no movement on it. It will be reviewed at the appropriate budget time for the annual budget, which was what the request was.
Right.
Okay, we'll bring it back in the budget process.
Okay.
Why didn't I get a phone call?
I just make a
Bill.
comment. I just want to
I was working
reiterate.
with
Next
those
time,
folks.
call Randy.
I was
Yeah,
working with
call-
those
yeah.
folks.
I just want to reiterate what I said earlier in the ADU discussion. If anybody, every credible estimate we've got is that the number of unpermitted, that's listed on the tax rolls as unoccupied accessory buildings that are in fact occupied, that number is in the hundreds. That is a significant amount of property tax revenue foregone if, those remain off the tax rolls. And it's an important issue for us to face in the future, that we get those on the tax rolls, get them legalized and on the tax rolls. It could make a difference in our revenue.
Okay, and going back to what Susan was mentioning, I have talked with members of the Arts Commission also on this, and Bill and I don't know if, I think, Randy, did you attend the Trimpany Arch thing? When we were at that, you made some remarks, Bill, about the, here we have what is supposedly a world-class, I shouldn't say supposedly, we do have a world-class piece of public art, and for reasons of creating a trap fence for
Right.
crowd control, we end up with a black cyclone fence right next to it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that both offends the Arts Commission as to not providing respect for the art project,
Right.
but it turned it into the gateway or a turnstile instead of what it's meant to be. So I would, I don't know if this is appropriate time under this to entertain some direction to staff, that there's no reason why we can't just pull that out. And it doesn't cost $25,000 to pull that out,
Right.
and then solve the issue of the crowd control as a separate decision.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing urgent,
Yeah, and I think there was something that
Right.
James, who was around, and Greg put together regarding they had some sort of plan to fix that.
Yeah, they did, and then there are several options of which we are getting more agreement now from the Arts Commission that could even, be attractive but temporary. If anybody wants to start spending, major construction money, I think that we have to seriously debate that.
Agree.
Andy?
So I've spent a long time on this.
I know you did.
A ton of time on it. And heading into this, we always knew it was an ask of council regarding funding. And that's why at this point in time, it can't be considered, and has to be considered down the road, to take money out of CIP or where else we could do it. But what we can do is we can address some of the concerns, and I think the first concern, you're absolutely right, is the chain link fence, which is just obnoxious. It just takes away from that piece of art. And then the biggest, or the second concern, is actually requiring all users of the facility to set themselves 10 to 15 feet. I think Steve's amended the contract. We could make it even more, 20 feet. But that was the biggest issue, is the fact that people set up tents, set up tables, lean trash, hang barrier, or hang,
Yeah.
marketing things.
Yeah, but deface
And
the
then-
work.
and it's just disrespectful. So I think we've addressed those in our conversations. Doing something permanent as far as creating another barrier, which is needed, might take more and more thought and more time.
Yeah, and I think there are several good ideas, and some of them that are reasonably priced, and then the question of where we get the money. I don't think that the general taxpayer needs to get hit too hard on that.
I agree with you.
Okay, so,
I hate to even ask, but so I heard interest in giving perhaps direction to just having the fence removed. Now, we could do that with staff. It doesn't need a budget, doesn't need, if that's the direction that we would like to go, I can give the order to Public Works to
That'd
do
be a good
that.
idea, and we can use temporary
Okay.
measures for.
Because we think we can.
Well, I don't know. There was, this isn't really what's on the agenda, but there's apparently James and Greg put together some plan. Is that just the removal of the fence that
No,
seems to
it
be?
involves expending money for a new fence, fence.
Yeah.
And so the idea of just pulling the existing piece would be a step in the direction of then deciding during the budget process how to budget for a replacement.
yeah, what the replacement will be. In the meantime, they've already come up with, temporary, I think one of the commissioners, the art commissioners, out of their own pocket, rented some stanchions and ropes.
Yeah,
for-
I will
and-
just say in my conversations with members of the Arts Commission, they made it very clear that they did not want us they were hopeful that we would not make any design decisions tonight, and I don't think we are, but
And
I
we're
can't
not.
tell. Okay.
Removing
Just wanna
the
make
fence is
sure.
not a
Absolutely.
design
Want to make
decision.
sure, okay.
Yeah.
Then we're all good.
By the way, they did pay for the stanchions. We did pick them up. We did set them up. And we did incur some misunderstanding in the use of the actual entry to the Trempen Arch, even after we made some requests not to allow certain
Well,
things.
and that's
So that
another
has
argument for just removing the fence now and then,
Right.
then
Right.
making a design
Right.
decision
And-
later.
And I just want to say, the city manager has addressed those in future usage of the facility. He's actually worded it differently where people understand when they rent it, they're going to have to be a certain distance from the arch.
Okay, so let's just direct that we remove the fence now and then get to the design later of the replacement.
Right, okay, so we have a motion to do that?
Yes.
Or do we need, if there's no objection to that,
Okay.
Steve, handle it.
Got it.
okay?
We'll get it
Can someone,
removed.
Mayor, before we move on, can someone clarify the citizens
Yeah.
relationship management application?
Oh, yeah. What is that?
Yeah, I have no
What
idea.
is that? I don't know what
Nobody
that
knows?
is either.
Well, we know, we know, and Mr. Vega could tell you all that you want to know about that. So that was actually an idea that we had considered, I think back in the last budget go-around. And Mr. Vega, you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is this the
Is
computer
this
complaint program?
Citizenship Relationship Act.
Oh, yeah, so we brought that back to council maybe 6 months ago. And the consensus at that time was we probably are not going to do it, but send an RFP out and see what we get. We got one response to the RFP, and it was more expensive than I anticipated, $29,000 the
James,
first
can
year.
you just explain what it is?
Yeah, so it's the application that a lot of cities and counties have that allows you to, take a photo of a pothole, hit a button, and it sends the
Okay.
complaint to the city. We did a full presentation where we showed that you could do that through the website, although there is, it's a little more convenient on the app. So the request was to find out what the cost would be, and it's $29,000
That's
the
going to
first
be part of the
year.
budget process.
Right.
Thank you, James.
Okay, thanks, James.
We're done.
Okay, well, we have adaptive
file and
reuse
receive on
policy
this,
on the
Mayor?
building. What,
Is that file and receive on this?
is
What
that
the motion is
on the last one?
on the budget?
Oh, on the budget, yes. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, is there,
We already voted to, already voted.
well, okay, no, you made a good point, Randy. Should we do it formally? Randy moves to approve that the
File
report
and receive.
received
Second.
and filed. Okay, moved and second. Any objection? None? Good. Randy, you're getting really good at that.
I'm watching a professional over there.
You're on top of your game. Yeah, thank you.
Coaching this guy up.
Okay, adaptive reuse policy for historic buildings. What are we supposed to do on that? It says receive a report and direct staff to consider adaptive reuse ordinances, policies, or development as part of the general plan update.
Correct.
Again, I'd make another motion on this to file and receive. I don't think there's much of a discussion on this.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any objection?
No, it's a good
No,
idea.
just crickets.
good
Good. Okay, we're
Very
done.
good.
Okay, now we go to,
Which you guys?
Randy, as your reward, you get to
Slapped you guys
report
around.
first on
Oh, I'm
what.
good.
Yeah, you're good. Okay, Ryan, you got?
I don't have anything. Well, I will say this, the Chamber of Commerce Gala is on Thursday, for those who are attending. I heard Bill is, if anyone else out there is attending. I believe you can still get tickets. It's going to be at the Ojai Valley Inn, where it annually is. But this year,
But-
the big difference is it will be in the new field house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The farmhouse.
And last I heard, I haven't got an update, but because it's in the field house, instead of where it normally is. I believe that there's more space, so there's more tickets, and last I heard, there's still tickets available.
I'll bet they have a hard time filling that place.
It's gonna be the biggest farmhouse you ever saw.
Okay. Susan?
I can never think of anything.
No, that's,
But-
okay, that's all right. I
Ride your
can't
bike.
either. I'm gonna,
But I will have something next time for sure. 'cause
Okay.
there are some
Bill?
things.
Yeah, I just want to, point out, we have, EDCVC came up with a specific application grant that was awarded for specifically focusing on business viability, entrepreneurship, and those kinds of things in the Ojai Valley and in the city of Ojai. It's a significant grant. Mr. Stencil's looking to come up and meet with the city manager and the mayor, perhaps myself as the board member, to talk about launching it. And I think it's nice to see that,
is it what, 95,000?
$95,000
Okay.
to help. And I want to reiterate, this is not to promote tourist businesses.
Now, is the
This is
chamber
about
gonna be
expanding our
involved?
economic base.
But is the chamber gonna join us?
Not for this meeting.
Oh,
but-
not? Okay.
But we're gonna, I think the request is for just city officials first, and then we move into the, but I do think it's important to, and appreciate that EDCVC, I mean, I've been talking about this for some time, we need some help expanding our base, and here we have, it, and this is not tourism.
Bill, if you need any, I'm interested in working on that if you need any help.
Okay.
Okay, my report is prospective rather than reporting on what we have done, but tomorrow at 11 o'clock here, we're going to have a disaster council meeting, and we're going to run through several items that are very current as a result of the campfire and other things, and just be sure we're all on the same page. We're going to talk a little bit about the communication systems and report back from staff on some of the conversations they've had with the radio group, and so if anybody's around and wants to
Mayor,
drop in.
any information from the Ojai Basin groundwater? Is there any increase in levels?
Oh, yeah, it's coming up, yeah.
Is
Well,
that-
in
is
fact,
that-
we meet Thursday night,
Correct.
and they'll give us the
So we'll have
official
that for
report.
the March meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the lake is up.
About 16 feet, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, they're all, there's, but after the next storm, I guess is a possibility, it could be up to 40, yeah,
Up to
40% full, which
yeah.
is, yeah, it still keeps us in drought 3, but,
They're doing a talk tomorrow, they're having a presentation tomorrow from Regina Hurst regarding another, a new water conservation program or something that they're doing in conjunction with Casitas. So I just want the public to know that, but it is gonna be a presentation at Casitas Municipal Water District
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, speaking of, has anyone heard about, one of the things I helped provoke was a meeting of all the signatories to the San Antonio Spreading Ground Project as to getting it working.
there's supposed to be a report on that
And there was going to be a
Thursday.
report on that tomorrow, you think, at the?
Thursday.
At Thursday, okay.
Thursday at
At
the
the OBGMA
OBGMA,
meeting,
yeah.
okay, good.
I think we know what the report is, it doesn't work, but,
Well, but what we're going to do about it not working.
yeah, right, well, yeah, and what's possible to do, they spent.
Because at the very least, we should be diverting all we're permitted to divert.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah.
But the creek is running nicely now.
But we're not diverting.
I know, but it's clear and it's,
But we're not diverting.
well, I mean, we're not slowing, spreading, and sinking. Is that
Exactly.
right? Okay, yeah.
To the extent that we are permitted to do so.
Well, I'm doing that in my backyard.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
killing my wife's cacti, but
Yeah.
it's, okay, we got what, agenda items? Is that or no, city manager has a report, I guess, or do
Yeah,
you?
I only have a couple of things. Thank you for, you mentioned some of the things that I was going to mention. It was nice to see the mayor out there for the dedication at the new barn, the new farmhouse yesterday.
Yeah, that was
At the
nice,
Ojai
actually.
Valley Inn. It was a very nice event. We are reaching out and asking to have some officials from SCAG come and speak to city council, just so that you can hear directly from them about the regional housing needs assessment process, where we are on that. Obviously, we don't have any numbers yet. We're making sure that the city has a seat at the table, but we thought it would be good if council is okay with, if amenable with that, to have the SCAG staff actually come and give a presentation again on the RANA process and what will be coming down the
Now,
road.
are they the local delivery service on Reno, or? is
Yes,
that-
they are.
Okay,
Yes.
and in our previous conversation, we have, asked what the process is going to be, or will ask what the process is going to be to take another look, even though they'll probably tell us nothing you can do. But,
Sure.
But it does seem to me that if we compare ourselves to cities like Thousand Oaks in numbers, it's semi-ridiculous.
Thousand Oaks got their rain numbers reduced to 1. The last thing I heard. So we need to ask them how they did that.
Right.
And are we
right.
gonna do this, are we gonna do this at council? Because they came a couple months ago, if I remember correctly, and we gave them 15 minutes or 20 minutes to speak. That's not enough time to really educate the community on what rated numbers are and what they mean. So I'm hoping that we can do it maybe a 6 o'clock meeting and give them an hour, if council so agrees.
I like
But
that.
they need more. The community needs more, and we need more.
And
Could
we-
do it that, or we could, if council's amenable, we could just schedule for a little longer presentation time, just make sure that we don't overjam the agenda. But we could call them in for a special meeting too.
Yeah,
Rather do
well,
the extended presentation time.
Yeah, right. Well, we can we can just allot a certain period of time on the regular agenda or estimate what it would.
Right.
But before we schedule that, we ought to get some kind of a formal response from them on what the situation is regarding the arena numbers, if they'll do it, and even if
Regarding the past allocations,
yeah,
yes.
even
yeah.
if it's telling us to go away or that there's, just to get it officially as a start point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know some of the other cities in the county were up in Sacramento lobbying too. So there may be some good feedback we can get from other cities. I know Moore Park was up there talking to people, so.
This is another reason for us to press forward on our general plan and include our housing element again, because I don't think we're going to be a big target for the governor as long as we are in good faith doing the things we're supposed to be doing. Fillmore is only on the list because they hadn't filed some reports on time, and I think they're
Right.
working their issue out, but
I
that's
think
the only
so.
one in our county, so.
That's
We used to
correct.
not file them, but now we are.
Exactly, no, but
Yep.
yeah, I've been going down making lists of all of the things that we have done properly, but that doesn't necessarily make it, real estate any cheaper or anybody to want to come in and build.
No, it doesn't build affordable homes,
And if we
right.
get a specific answer on the question of how does our ADU program, does that, what credits do we get with RENA?
It's part of our reports.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it just the number we get, or is it that the way we've codified it is important? Because I thought, because we know we reached the numbers, they count towards it.
That's part of
but
our
is
compliance, but the reports just have the counts.
Okay.
Well, there's another aspect to it also, and that's we were talking about this last night at the Democratic Club, is the fact that when you look at the rain in numbers and then you look at the overlay that we created, 10, 12 years ago, the fact that the Hobson property behind us was on it, the fact that the school board
Yeah,
property is
the
on it.
skateboard park,
There's
yeah.
there's just things that don't make sense that maybe look good up north because they've never been to Ojai, but I think you need to be truthful when you do these.
Well, that's what got a lot of communities in trouble, there are some coastal communities that
Yeah.
overlaid part of the Pacific Ocean,
gonna say,
and the governor.
Channel Island on there.
Yeah,
Saying,
right, yeah, so-
no, guys,
Yeah, so that doesn't count. yeah.
But, and
It's only 2
again,
feet deep. Come
and again, Mayor, what's interesting about this, I said it earlier, but when you're having this discussion about that, and we can have a discussion about ADUs, and then we really need to have a broader discussion about, not necessarily the word affordable housing, but workforce housing, or the things of that in this community, and actually create an environment where we're actually doing something rather than just talking about it. We always figure out, I remember my accountant told me when we were buying our house, stop thinking about how you can't do it, start thinking about how you can do it. And that's the paradigm that we need to change in this community. And we just have to do it in a manner where we get as many people as we can buying in. So, and it's important.
My accountant told me to move to Oakview, so.
What?
Yeah, right. Or Lancaster.
I had a quick question for the city manager.
Yes.
Have we scheduled the scooter regulations yet? Because I gotta tell you, I just got back from Austin, it's a menace.
No, we don't have a firm date on that one yet.
All right. Well,
Okay, I have a
And-
question too. Oh,
Okay, I had one question too. I would like to hear a report back from the Edison Company on the possibility of leasing parking
Yeah.
on the vacant lot.
Okay.
That
Yes.
has been
In a while.
Which lot? Which lot is it?
Underneath their easement.
They've got they have
On
a piece right
Montgomery,
off the bicycle
just
path.
south of the bike path.
On what? On
No,
Street?
just
Underneath
north.
their easement, near
North
the
of the
bike path.
bike path.
On Montgomery, just south of the
Where the
bike
power
path
lines are.
on the east side there,
by
where the
the-
switching station
I
is,
know
yeah.
exactly where
But
you're
there's a large flat area there closer to Montgomery Street, which we've had some discussions with, and they might be willing to lease that to
Lease it
us.
for parking.
Right.
Yeah, it's north
Right,
of the
north
bike
bike
path.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
I knew where you meant.
We natives.
Okay, I just want to ask, when Councilmember Haney asked to reconsider the stop sign,
Yes?
is there anything more involved in bringing back the same report? What's the,
No, I was going to mention that's one of the items that is coming back at the next council meeting.
okay, good, because
Oh, fun.
I'm going to lead the bike train, and I want, if the stop sign isn't in, I was going to ask you to be the crossing guard in May.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna ask you for, what's your criteria for putting a stop sign there? So be prepared to answer that one.
So we'll have that to look
Yes.
forward to.
I also did check our code regarding Robert's rules and motions of reconsideration, and we ain't following it, but that's okay, because we're all friends and we want to get this done, but it should be done, and not, right now, it could be on hold forever, the way it's going, and it defeats the whole purpose of the motion.
Right.
You have to be on the affirmative side to, so we'll have a second conversation, but then we should decide it one way or the other, and not.
What's that?
The stop sign.
You
Oh.
what?
Yeah,
I thought Johnny was talking a different.
Yeah, it should come back so we get it done.
It's coming back
Otherwise, it's
at
just
the
out
next
there in
meeting.
limbo.
Yeah, okay, and then the other two things were the letter for the Creek Road.
Also coming
residents,
back at the
coming
next
back.
meeting, yes.
And then people are wondering about the cannabis manufacturing, and I know that we're working on it.
We are.
You'll tell us when the next meeting is? Or?
Yes, we'll get that scheduled as soon as we can. I don't think we'll be able to get that on for the March 12th agenda, but
Okay.
we'll try to get the committee together as soon as possible.
We've had, we're the cannabis
Right, yeah.
manufacturing subcommittee, and so I just want to move it, we've had meetings, and I'm just wondering if, when our next subcommittee
Right, and
meeting
will
is,
that bring-
and when it will be on the agenda.
And are you guys also considering taxes?
Oh,
Since
yeah.
we're the only place that's
Oh, yeah.
not, I don't think
Yeah.
we don't want to burden it, but at the same time, it's sort of foolish not to at least.
Well, I'll defer to the council members on the committee,
Yeah.
but yes, there has been discussion
But
on that as
extend-
well.
Either that, or we should use the Port Hueneme approach that in the paper this morning, where
Right.
it's pass the hat down there and say, okay, we got a lot of programs you guys could start sponsoring, like, the homeless shelter that they bought beds for.
Right.
That was good.
Yep,
Good
so,
thing.
okay, enough?
A little more like that Brown Act thing you were just talking about.
Mr. Mayor, I did get a chance to, sorry if I spoke over you.
No. You know what, I gotta ask, if we're on the subcommittee, are we allowed, I mean, is there a Brown Act violation for talking about things we've discussed in the subcommittee on a non-agenda item about
Yeah.
the cannabis, because that's why I didn't say.
Yeah, we should not be deliberating on that.
No, we're not deliberating,
Okay.
we're just
We asked
saying.
some specific questions, so I cannot confirm or deny whether
Okay,
or not we're discussing.
okay, that's fine. You may disregard the question,
There's a
but
reason
it'll
why
come
it's
up then when it
taking-
comes
Let's
back to
just-
council.
Taking a
let's
long
just drop
time,
this
just
right
going
now,
in
okay?
depth, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the city manager still has the floor.
Couple things that are also coming for March 12th, just so everybody's aware. We are coming back as we do once a year. It was a good lead into, we once a year, we come back with their growth management plan update, and we also come back with our general plan update. This generates the report that then goes to the state, to HCD,
So we
to
stay in
show where we are,
compliance,
just so
yeah.
that we are staying in compliance with our housing element. So those two items are also on the agenda for March 12th. You mentioned the stop sign. 20 is plenty is also coming for discussion. The city attorney has requested an item that is timely to deal with some new small wireless cell standards. So that's another item we'll be bringing to council with a recommendation. And we are also working very hard to get the audit done and are hoping that we will have that ready for the March 12th meeting.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Police chief?
Just real quick on the Creek Road thing, I did meet with the Ohio Patrol commander, as I said I was going to, and asked him to do extra patrols during the peak travel times, as was asked. And on my way into work, I saw the Ohio Patrolman out there, and I talked to him later on, and he had made I think 20 stops, wrote 10 tickets, and gave 10 warnings. The people that got cited were ones that saw him and continued to accelerate. Those
Wow.
that got warnings were the ones that actually saw him and slowed down.
Wow.
Slow down.
So what days and times are those?
Oh, no. Thank you.
Nobody's allowed to drive on Creek Road anymore, by the way,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter.
It may be helping because today I went and I had somebody looking like they were gonna crawl up my back, and then they backed off, and I kept watching the mirror, and I kept it right at speed, and people were starting to pay attention.
And I think that's a big takeaway is making sure you're just driving the speed limit, right? And the curves you can slow down per the warnings, right? Obviously, if it's icy or foggy, slow down even more. But if you're doing 45 as the speed limit is, you're less likely to create a road rage situation or encourage
Right.
people to unsafely pass. So if you're intentionally driving slow to slow people down, it doesn't work. You're going to make them upset, and we're going to have road rage.
Yeah. You may be the accident if you get the wrong road rage. Okay, so do you have anything else, Steve?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Bill, do you have any agenda item? Okay. We're done, thanks.